I gotta. Wow, it's so much faster when Facebook isn't a part of this. So I actually just got banned from Facebook for 30 days. The last two bans, my other bans, my short ones were pretty justified, but my last two were not. This time it
Random
was.
people reporting nonsense.
It had to have been a bot. It was so fast, and they shut down my appeal immediately. It was literally over a who would win debate regarding Avatar: The Last Airbender, and
What the frick?
so on this one, if you took what I said completely out of context, it sounds bad, but like within the context, it's fine. So I said that an Earthbender. Have you ever watched it?
I no, and I'm vaguely familiar with it. That wouldn't be my area of expertise.
Okay, well, it's just the idea here. Like certain people in there can control the element of Earth. I said they could pull the iron right out of your body, like Magneto style,
Uh,
and basically making you into a pipe bomb. They said, and my friend said, "Well, not if you're anemic." And I said, "Well, if you're anemic, you have low energy, so I can just walk over and beat you up." That's what got me banned. Facebook bots saw this as me threatening to beat somebody up, and banned me.
oh, pardon my language, but come the fuck on.
Oh, you can swear all you want, buddy. So
Ridiculous.
so yeah, this is only on Twitch and YouTube now. Sad
Okay.
day. So anyways, this is WP. He's a veterans police officer, right? Or police officer at the VA.
Correct. The Veterans Affairs Police Officer, so I'm federal.
Okay. And did you serve any military time? I actually don't know that.
Yes, I was in the Army Reserves for 6 years with one deployment overseas.
Okay, so you're a veteran too.
Yes.
You're a
So
veteran
that
who work at
makes
the
my
VA.
job super awesome. I love working for the VA and helping vets. It's really holds a place close to me, and I really love giving back and serving them.
Actually, I just had to add one to my list here of things I wanted to ask you now. But that's gotta be like a pretty sweet perk though. If you ever have to do any like stuff at the VA, like for your medical, you just like go to work, huh? You just schedule it right before or after a shift.
Yeah, no. It has its benefits and disadvantages because I do choose to get my care through the VA. You don't have to you don't have to get your medical care through the
Mm-hmm.
VA as a veteran, but I choose to, and it's always sometimes it's a little awkward, like you go to like more or less like a coworker for like your medical stuff.
Sure.
But everybody, I mean, I deal with people in interesting and possibly, some could consider embarrassing situations, and I keep it professional, so I expect
Sure.
the same, and haven't found anything to the contrary.
Okay. So actually, because we just talked about the VA, I didn't think about this. Has the has like the structure of the VA gotten better? Like I know for a while there was like a bunch of people like on backlogs and like they wouldn't add people to it. Like I remember that report came out that they were adding people to it like post hoc after the fact so that it wouldn't look like they were waiting for a really long time. And not necessarily saying it's their fault because I know that they were like gloriously underfunded. Is there like been more funding and like fixing to that kind of stuff? Or did you guys even
So,
deal with any of that like at your location?
so it's I've been in the VA for nearly 5 years as an
Mm-hmm.
employee, but I've only been using them as a healthcare provider only for about the last year.
Oh, okay.
Um, and I know they did make changes in terms of like if the VA could not schedule you at their location
Mm-hmm.
within, I think it was like 30 days or something, then they more or less farmed you out to a local place.
Like a local
Uh,
medical facility, just covered under
yeah,
VA
local.
insurance.
Yeah, exactly. They
Okay.
turn around, they bill the feds, and then they go get their care outside for, and it's that usually only really happens for like specialty stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But like for me, like one thing I get is massage therapy for my back,
Mm-hmm.
and so that the VA doesn't offer that personally, so they farm me out to a local system.
Sure. And I assume they would use that too if they had like an overflow of patients too.
Typically, yeah. I mean, you can come in there. I mean, you can call your local provider or your personal care provider, and I mean, I mean, you can get in almost always same day, if not within like a day or two.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, specialty stuff. is a little different, and especially now during COVID, it's a hell of a lot different. I mean, the
Sure.
VA, and it's weird because like the VA, pretty much starting late March
Hmm.
until, boy, I'd say almost August, unless like it was some life-threatening, like detriment to your health type appointment,
Hmm.
it was like a ghost town, and out of a overly cautious approach to COVID. So it was like, the VA was like ratcheting up for like if COVID got like crazy bad, and like there was like whole floors cleared out in anticipation of COVID patients because
Sure.
we just didn't really know what we were dealing with. Uh, it seemed like so. And that's just small guy looking up. I don't know the ins and outs of all of their policies and plans for that, but I know it's a little different right now. Like I've had a bunch of appointments scheduled and canceled. I don't know if it's because of COVID or what the case is, but like I've been waiting for like two specialty things for like I don't know 6 months or so, but it's like it's not life threatening type stuff. So
Sure. Um, yeah, I'd imagine a lot of people wouldn't even want to come in just because they'd be afraid of being around sick people who had COVID too.
yeah, and that's you see a lot of people concerned with that. Um, our facility in particular has made adjustments of how you enter and how you leave to minimize like passing contact and to be
Hmm.
able to at least like choke points, try and socially distance.
Sure.
Um, I would say certainly within the last month, appointments have certainly picked up. So like it used to be where it almost looked like a weekend on a weekday, but now it's a little bit nearly back to normal.
Okay. Is the weekend on a weekday? Does that mean you guys are like a lot busier on the weekends?
No, the opposite. So like during the height of like closing all the appointments down, like weekends, it's pretty much a ghost town because it's federal. So basically Saturdays and Sundays are basically emergent care only, and then obviously inpatient care. So there's no like
Do you want me to bring your
very
plate
rarely there's like weekend clinics or anything like that.
I gotcha. Um, yeah, man, I'd be nervous working in that. Are you nervous about getting COVID? Being there?
A little bit. You know, um, it certainly is in the front of your mind, I would say, not even in the back, just because as an employee, you're always being every day you're being screened for COVID. Asked like the questions of do you have X, Y, and Z,
Hmm.
all the symptoms. You get your temperature taken coming in as an employee every day. Masks are mandated, at the facility
Sure.
when you're in common areas or shared offices. And I had actually had, you know, I think, or it was allergies, but I called our employee health out of abundance of caution to say like, hey, I'm feeling a little crummy. Can I get a test? And they're like, yeah, sure, but you have to not be at work for a few days. So, uh,
Oh
you
wow!
know,
Just because you requested a test.
well, because I requested a test with symptoms.
Oh, I gotcha.
So if you
Just
have like a couple symptoms and you request a test, they kick you. They basically it's like a 72-hour like you can't come to work.
I gotcha.
So we've been just the hospital in general, especially like nursing staff, not the PD so much, but more so nursing staff have been like hit hard with staffing. Everyone's really feeling the staffing right now because I mean there's it's around in the VA, employees and otherwise, and veterans. I mean, you hear so and so's off for 10 days. Well, you know what that means. So,
Oh
uh,
man.
you know, but it's so I got tested. My first test was last Friday. So,
Oh okay.
uh, yeah, took all the way till October to get my first one because I had never had symptoms before or any direct exposure that I was aware of. So I didn't get tested up until then.
I got you, man. I'd be so scared.
Yeah, but I mean, you have to manage the fact of like, you have a job to do, and I'm fairly healthy, and fairly young, so I wouldn't say I'm not, or I'm fairly confident that if I got it, I would be okay. But I, why step in 100 squares and one of them could be a landmine if you don't have to type thing.
Yeah, I
So,
feel ya. As soon as this shit happened, I told my boss, said, "Hey man, I'll be back when it's done." As soon as Michigan got its first case, we were just hours away from being declared a state of emergency. I told my boss, I told him when it was coming to. I was like, "Hey man, I will see you when this is all over," and he was just like,
yeah.
"That's fair."
Yeah, and that's good that you're in that position to be able to do that. I know,
Yeah, very lucky.
you know, neighbors or personal acquaintances and stuff like that, where like whether by choice or by force, are unable to work, and it's like really kind of fucking their shit up right now. Uh, so it's, I mean, it's COVID is just terrible in so many fronts, economically and just personal health wise, and
Mm-hmm.
just the fear and anxiety, like as just humans, like it's not good to. I mean, some people blow it off at some very dumb people blow it off as a hoax or
Yeah.
bullshit, and that's not the way to live, and it's not, in my opinion, the way to live in constant fear. But fear and stress can be a good thing because it keeps you in line, but it's still like it's a very stressful year just to live through this at the moment.
Yeah, dude. When it first happened, I was taking my temperature like all the time, like
Mm.
many times a day, like probably like 20 times a day. So I have asthma and I'm overweight, so I'm just like not in good position. And then my mom moved in with me a year from last month after her house exploded, and
Oh
she
shit,
has
Jesus.
yeah, her whole house
That's
like boom, and
that's awful.
it was rough. And she has COPD, she has asthma, and she's over 50. So you gotta take precautions for her as well.
Right, definitely. Yeah, you have to protect the ones you love, and that's another tough balancing act of like, well, do you not see your relatives for a year, 2 years? Do you try and be as safe as possible and visit them? It's really individual and family unit choices on how you kind of approach that situation.
Yeah, that's fair. I think it's a conversation you have to have with your family.
Definitely, yeah.
So
That you all have to kind of come to some sort of agreement with.
yeah, I don't think it's fair to like assume the risk for them. So it's just
Right,
something you just gotta decide.
right. I agree.
So one of the things that I like, the very first thing on my list of things I wanted to talk to you about are like, how are the like inner like police politics like between you and other cops and like you and the justice system, like how does that go?
Do you mean in terms of like how we interact with other departments?
Yeah, so like how do you interact like interdepartmentally, and then like how do you interact with other departments as well? So like
Um, yeah, clarify the interdepartmentally one, if
so
you could,
like
please.
I know that it's like a really common like cliche, and if not like at least to some degree it's true that like cops will cover for other cops and things like that. Like how real is that? Like to like what extent like do you think that is, and like do you see that ever? And not necessarily saying it's a bad thing either. I'm sure in certain instances like something might look bad and it not necessarily be bad. So it helps to maybe just give the benefit of the doubt to like uh like a guy that you know that you work with and stuff.
Hmm.
Like for instance, I know if my coworker like if something looked really bad that he did, but I knew that it wasn't as bad as it might appear to my boss, I'd just probably tell my boss like it's not a big deal, don't even worry about it, and just like take it right off his plate in general. So like I wouldn't expect that to be completely excluded from like a police profession either. So I was just curious as to like what you think about that.
So, okay, so opinion and observation.
Yeah.
So I'll give you observation, and what I assume alluding to is like kind of like the blue line type mentality,
Yeah.
or yeah, theoretically, that. So my observations on it, um, I've seen and so I've been at a few different facilities, and I've dealt with really bad, at least in one instance, a really bad officer who should not have been a police officer.
Sure.
And and other officers, almost every other officer, uh, did internal reporting on him because of his like he was like a loose cannon. Like this guy was not somebody that we even felt safe being around as
Oh,
police
jeez.
officers. Yeah, like
So like,
and
can you clarify me what you mean by not safe? Like not safe in terms of like he might get like like you might get dragged down with him, or
no,
like
like school shootery
physically.
vibes.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, yeah, it was bad. This one particular officer, which he's no longer a police officer,
You want
thank
some?
God. Um,
Huh?
it's not a job for everyone, and from what I observed in general from my few stations, is that if it's something, if it's a something major, if it's like a safety concern for either yourself or for others,
Mm,
uh, you have to report it because it's basically your career versus theirs. I mean, that's kind of been instilled. Obviously, it's a weird dynamic because your partner or partners on your shift or that you're working with, I mean, you have the potential to be in like a life or death situation with. So it's that almost like combat bond, if you will.
yeah, you got to know that
Um,
you can trust each other, right?
100%. But on the same or the other side of that coin is that sometimes, I mean, or the not sometimes, but the police have to be policed and be held accountable
Sure.
because we, in my opinion, are held to a higher standard. And if it's minor shit where it's not a safety concern, where it's just a um, so I'll give you an example of some minor stuff that
Sure.
isn't necessarily a reportable thing, but I confronted the situation.
Hmm.
A guy was trying to come in the entrance that you're not supposed to, but
Hmm.
thought just because he was police in the morning that he could. Obviously, during our workday, we're free to mill about because it's part of our duties.
Sure.
But you're not above the law when you're just walking in for your tour, for
Sure.
your duty day. So I stopped him at the door and I said, "You need to go around to the designated entrance. You can't come in here. You have to go be screened and go to the proper area." It's like, oh, okay. It was just a minor correction
Mm-hmm.
because I really take to heart the fact that if we can't, as officers, if we don't follow the rules and law, and even to a T or to a higher standard, how can we enforce it on
I'm
others?
I'm very much of the same persuasion. So
Because
you think of cops as being examples, right?
100%, yes. Because pre or I don't know, several years ago, I'd say, everyone or kids are like, I want to be a cop when I grow up, and I the glorification of cops, I guess you could say,
Hmm.
and I would say like, legitimately, like the overwhelming majority of cops are in it for good reasons, uh,
Sure.
bec- because to choose that profession and put your life on the line for others, you really have to have a sense of service, in my opinion.
Hmm.
And usually service is selfless. I mean, obviously it's fulfilling, so in a way everything we do is selfish in my opinion.
Sure.
But the gratification that we get is through selflessness. So um
Putting
so I
others
would
before
say
yourself.
what's that?
The putting of others before yourself.
Yes. So I mean I get a sense of satisfaction and from being that server. I like serving the public. It's what I've done for many years and what I'll probably continue to do. So, to make sure that I answered your question though, so there's a couple examples of like where shit gets like way crazy out of hand, and you got to turn them in more or less, and
Hmm.
then it's up to the system and your management to make sure that stuff is handled. And then it comes down to like minor shit, like dude, you're not above go following what all the other employees have to do. You're not above that, and to kind of check your own guys. Uh, so,
S-
and then my
Go ahead.
opinion, real quick, my opinion of it is I think there needs to be we need to hold each other accountable, because if we don't, then who else will? Besides, maybe the justice system sometimes.
Now, are there like negative consequences that like if you've seen a fellow officer doing something shady that he might not should have been doing, and you report that? Is there any fear of any blowback coming down on you?
No, I don't believe so. Not in my current place or my previous places. I never felt like you couldn't report it, and the only blowback that you might get would be from that individual or possibly the other guys, possibly. So it's more of a social, taking a
Sure.
social hit, but in terms of like a career hit, probably not. I've never really come across, or at least have gotten the sense in the places that I've worked, where if you come forward with some, misconduct, that you're going to be uh, labeled by management as like, do not promote ever, or like get fired type thing. So
Mm-hmm.
it's more or less of like, because if you and one other guy, if you're with one other guy and see some shady shit and report it, well, it's no question of who reported it.
Sure.
So,
Yeah, there's
but
no hiding that.
that's kind of, unfortunately, that kind of goes with it. It's no different than having to, write somebody a ticket or arrest them. If you see the illegal thing, it's like NFL and penalties. If the ref doesn't see it, I suppose it's not a penalty. And if the cops don't see it or catch you, it's not illegal, I guess. So
Mm-hmm.
does that
Um,
kind of answer that question in both aspects for you?
yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Before and then what about like throughout like other departments and stuff? Is there
Oh,
like if let's say you like bring somebody in, like let's say you had to bring somebody in, um, for whatever reason. Do you have any does your input matter at all on how that process moves forward?
um, so are you talking about our own personal officer discretion in
So
dealing
let's
with cases, or if say like the cops bring in some drunk guy, or some, or the outside agency brings in like some drunk guy,
no, so like let's say
or
you arrest somebody. Um,
sure.
how does that interaction go with like like the prosecutor after you arrest somebody?
It's usually, so I mean, when we arrest somebody, and then if we're ever called as witnesses,
Mm-hmm.
we are a prosecutor, a prosecutor. I'm sorry, we're a witness for the prosecution.
Mm-hmm.
So we're obviously on their side and want to be good witnesses for them.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so I mean, in terms of like the input, that really happens on pushing the case to actually be taken.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes, anything short of an arrest, there's a lot of stuff where we just refer charges. So if we do an investigation and find out something illegal happened, then we refer that either to the United States Attorney or a United States Attorney's office, or we refer it to local. Because we do both. We do both state and federal charges. So,
Mm-hmm.
but usually our decision points and input and discretion kind of happens before that, on what we want
Sure.
to refer the charges for, or what we want to arrest or not arrest for,
Mm-hmm.
or warn for. That's really where we have the widest latitude. But once we refer something over to charges, it's really okay. How well did we document it? How good of a witness? Which, if you do your report fine and you go up there and you observed illegal action A, and you just speak to illegal action A, then it's pretty cut and dry in my opinion. Um, so, but our widest latitude comes with the actual, like, before it gets to prosecution.
Mm-hmm. So I guess that kind of leads me into like what kind of training and like legal understanding do you guys have? I know you mentioned a book when we talked privately.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's many, and it's interesting being federal and
Mm-hmm.
charging state and federal. You have to be fairly familiar with both federal and state statutes.
Mm-hmm.
And specifically to the VA, there's like 45 offenses that you can write just a straight up ticket for, which range from, well, technically, spitting on property is actually a like $50 ticket,
Oh wow.
all the way up to like being, drunk or disorderly. and then like parking, speeding, et cetera, et cetera. There's like 45 specific like offenses that we can just write a ticket for straight up, and then there's obviously federal charges, which to have those pushed forward, you'd have to consult with the assistant U.S. attorney and say, hey, here's what we got. This is what we were thinking of charging. And then they kind of say yes or no. And then a lot of the times they say, this sounds like it's better for your local district attorney. So then we turn around and kick it to the county. And then we have to tailor it to state charges. So there's a lot of... you have to be familiar with quite a few statutes across the board. And, a lot of that is just good Googling, in my opinion.
Sure. So,
I mean, you have to obviously have a base knowledge of like what's legal, what's illegal. But sometimes you're like, I don't know if that's illegal-ish. So you have to kind of look up the statute to make sure that it meets the element of the crime.
Yeah, so I was
Or
curious, like, so what
elements.
kind of actual training do you get in like interpreting like statutes and things like that? Like I mean, even in my job, I do a lot of googling too. I feel like most people probably do anymore. But like, what do
Sure.
they like? Do you have any kind of training on like interpretation of statutes?
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, we get like updates of case law, like federal, usually like federal court decisions and stuff like that. We obviously in our academy um, do our law week, or is it 2 weeks of law training basically, and that's an understanding of like the main things like Miranda is a big important one, and Graham versus Connor, and use of force, when's justifiable versus when it's not. So there's, I mean, we get a fair amount of law training. A lot of it, though, especially in the state realm for us, tends to be like, um, I mean, just kind of doing your own self-training with that
okay.
and self-experience.
Do you, would you say, in your opinion, that's like sufficient, or they could probably be doing better job for that, or what?
From my experience, we could probably do better on state statute training. I think federal. I mean, there's like a million federal laws technically.
Sure.
Well, not technically, but there's a lot, and you're never gonna know all of them. You got to know like the important ones. But the main thing they teach you is, okay, there's laws, and there's elements to these laws that make it a crime, and you have to meet all these elements at the probable cause level to make an arrest or referral.
Sure.
So that's where it leads into, okay, he did A, he did B, but he didn't mean it with C, or he didn't do C, so it's not a crime per se, or it's not, it doesn't fall under this statute. So it's a lot of applying your knowledge of how the law works to different statutes. And it's the same concept at both the state and federal level. But I mean, like, there's like the major case laws, like Graham versus Connor, Miranda are two of the ones that kind of come to mind.
It's like I tend to think of a lot too. Like I've been pulled over for like a routine traffic stop before, and I've had officers at least pretend not to know that they didn't have like legal cause to search my vehicle and attempt to, and I shot them down, and I seen them like get on the radio and stuff, and then end up leaving. So like it just that's always something that sticks out in my head too. Like I always wonder like how much training are these guys getting if they think that they have this right? Like I understand the idea of like wanting to ask every time, because why wouldn't you?
Sure.
Um,
And that really, a lot of it's fishing.
mhm.
A lot of officers go on some fishing expeditions because it's kind of a fact that a lot of weird shit just comes from quote unquote routine, and they always tell us no such thing as a routine stop, but a routine traffic stop can lead to so much shit. That's
Sure.
why, because it leads you into contact with individuals, and then if anything raises your suspicion at all, whether it's how they're acting, something that's in the car, something like that, then it makes you dig a little deeper and deeper, and until you're sufficiently satisfied that there's nothing illegal happening. So I mean, you can, as a citizen, you can consent away to anything. You can consent for
Right.
any searches or anything like that. But then obviously you can say no if it calls for it. And sometimes some people think that they can say no and they can't, and sometimes they say no and then they're like, okay, goodbye, and end the contact. So
I've
uh,
I've been I've denied searches. I've only let a cop search my vehicle one time. I've been illegally searched on my person before. Um, I was a minor and all I did was get out of a vehicle. Uh, this was just an example of a really bad cop though. But actually
sure.
he's chief of police now. I remember my buddy, he didn't flash his lights or anything. He followed my buddy into a gas station. He's like, "All right, just hop out and get your Slurpee." I did. He pulled his gun on me and came up and searched me. I was like 14 or 15 years old and I was like, "I don't even know what's happening." I was heading to the gas station. And then that same cop too, he pulled me over for one time making an illegal left-hand turn, had me get out of the vehicle and started searching my car. All kinds of goofy stuff.
Yeah, and that's where, I mean, you can't excuse illegal action like that. I mean, really, you just can't.
It's small town; they can get away with it.
More or less. And I'm sure, I would assume, that's years ago enough to where not everybody's live streaming or recording everything
Yeah, sure,
on
absolutely.
either end, whether it's body cameras or personal cell phones. So,
Yeah,
and I think body cameras are awesome because it keeps everybody honest. If you're an honest cop doing a good job and acting in good faith in what you're doing as your duties, you can record me for my entire shift. That's great.
do
I
you
don't
think there,
care.
do you think there should be a legal penalty for willfully turning your body camera off or removing it?
Yeah, I mean,
If
if you're
something
trying,
happens during that time, at least I should say.
if it's all legal or illegal actions always come down to intent. If the intent was to hide you doing something shady or shitty, yeah, there should be penalties for that.
Does
Whether it's a violation or whether it's a policy thing or a law thing, but that's not. It again comes with honesty and transparency.
that's a really interesting thing. You said that like it comes down to intent. It's not like at odds with like ignorance isn't an excuse for like not breaking the law. Like maybe you can bridge this my understanding here.
No, because well, yes and no. Because when it comes down to and take traffic stuff aside,
Sure.
but I mean, if you violate the law, a
Hmm.
lot of stuff comes down to intent when it comes to violating the law. Uh, one thing I can think of is like harassment or like harassing texts or nuisance text and stuff like that,
Hmm.
or intimidation type stuff. You have to have the intent to do X, Y, or Z.
Sure.
And that's always like the last part is to prove intent that they willfully intended to cause intimidation or harassment.
Well,
uh
that's why I said to with the body cam. Do you think it's if they willfully turn it off or remove it?
right. In if the intent is to hide action,
Hmm.
then I think that should be penalized. Yeah.
Could you think of another example where like you would turn it off for without that reason?
um I mean, it would have to be, again, it's a case by case. Like, honestly, it's probably not the answer you want to hear, but
Sure.
it has to be. You can't say everybody who turns a body cam off during an interaction or loses it or
Well,
takes
losing
it
it would be
off.
different.
Like,
That
right. So we'll stick to willful turning off or removal.
yeah.
I can't really think of any situation where that would be appropriate, but
Sure.
again, it would have to be, uh, it
It'd have to
again,
be a remarkable claim.
Yes, I think that would be odd. Now, personally, we don't use them yet. Supposedly, it's in the pipe works for us,
Sure.
and I'm happy because obviously we're in a hospital setting and HIPAA is a concern and stuff like that. Also, the actual maintaining of like the footage for X amount of time and
It's
the
expensive.
IT expense of that is kind of a little bit of a hoop to jump through. But
It amazes me because I work in surveillance. That's like one of my like foremost expertise. Like I see some of these like bills and stuff, and like costs for surveillance, and like body cams. Like I've even purchased and sold body cams too, and I've even had cops come up off duty to buy body cams from me. I actually have a fair amount of interaction with my local police force because we're the local surveillance shop, and like I've had them tell me about like how their like their budget and stuff works with this stuff. Cops are paying outrageous amounts of money for data storage and even like the equipment itself. It's crazy to me. um,
it's a
I don't know
business you
who's
should
making these
fully get
decisions.
into.
uh, I mean, as far as like selling surveillance to police.
Yes, selling
Yeah,
body cam. Get into the
dude,
business. It's profitable, I would imagine. So
it's gotta be, but like I feel like it should be less so. Like somebody should be stepping. I maybe there's some requirements that I don't understand that jack up
well,
the price.
there's statutory requirement, or it has to record for so long, and keep on it for such period of time, and
Hmm.
it usually varies by jurisdiction or state.
Hmm.
And then you also have to store that and pull it off the cameras, and then you also have to have,
The data housed.
basically, right, a place or a way to store that data securely, and also you have to be able to edit it for, you know, release or for whatever. So all that comes with, you have to have software that is easy to use because not everybody editing body
Hmm.
cameras is an IT person. Usually it's like not IT people. You'd
Sure.
be surprised with how many of my superiors that I've actually taught how to just do basic computer shit. So
You'd think I'd be surprised, but before even surveillance, I'm an IT professional first and foremost. Nothing
well,
surprises me. When I
that's fair.
trained the new guy, I hired a new guy and I told him, I said that the best advice I can give you is to treat every single customer like they're completely retarded. Your life will be
It's
so
not a
much
bad-
easier. Oh my gosh. I spent
It's
20
not.
minutes on the phone with a woman trying to get her to open Internet Explorer over the phone. I swear to God, I took a picture of the phone just to show how long I was on the phone with her to open Internet Explorer. And she was only like 40.
Yeah, man. Like it's wildly different. How, I mean, 'cause anybody, I don't know, maybe I would say probably 40-ish is the range where you didn't necessarily have computer class or grew up with a computer. So some people like 40-ish or older just decided, you know what, the whole computer thing, it ain't for me, and they just willfully neglected any sort of like skills that come with that.
That's
And
crazy. You'd
it's
think they would have seen the writing on the wall.
well, people don't like change, and why aren't we doing paper anymore? What's all this fucking digital shit? Like, fucking give me the microchips, man. Give me the fucking brain implants. Fucking hook it up, dude.
Did you watch the Neuralink thing?
The what?
The Neuralink demo they did?
I did not.
Oh,
I am going
man.
to have to check that out.
Yeah, they put it in pigs, and I was like, "This is awesome." And I was explaining to my wife like the implications of it and stuff. She's like, "That's fucking crazy. I don't want none of that." I was like, "I want Neuralink in my head." Like, could you imagine just thinking of like a song and then you can hear it? How dope would
Dude.
that be?
I'm in. I'm telling you. Fucking chip me up. Fucking, I don't know, put the Total Recall remake hand cell phone. Just give me fucking all the augments, man. If I was like if you're familiar with Shadowrun, just give me all the
That's
fucking
so
augments.
funny. You say that. Did you ever play it for Super Nintendo?
No, and I think we touched on this before. So my exposure to Shadowrun was the pen and paper tabletop game.
I just downloaded the PDF for second edition. I finally found the whole thing.
Ooh, I think they're on 4th edition now.
Sixth.
Or 6th, is it even?
Yeah,
Oh, shit.
yeah.
Maybe I have 5th edition, but I don't have 6th.
I'm such a
Uh,
huge fan of the Super Nintendo game, and I found out that the 2014 Shadowrun game, they modded, they created a mod for it, and they remastered the Super Nintendo one,
huh. Well, I
and
know
it's awesome.
there's one on Steam that's
There's a couple.
and that might be the like Shadowrun Returns one. That might have been the 2014 one.
Let's see, which
Uh,
one do I
but
have?
it's kind of like an overhead, almost like what's it? Almost
XCOM.
XCOM-y. Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird when I hear it referred to like in similar to XCOM because they look similar, but I would not put them in the same ballpark at all. So I have Shadowrun Returns and I have Shadowrun Dragonfall. I think
Yeah.
Dragonfall is Returns the newer.
I know. I think
Oh shit.
Dragonfall was the re-release, maybe. I forget. But I haven't played those in a couple years, and I haven't played Shadowrun even longer than that, like the actual pen and paper.
Mhm.
But it's such a cool setting, like the cyberpunk thing, and then obviously I'm jazzed for Cyberpunk 2077.
Oh yeah, me
Uh,
too.
but give me the fucking augments, man. Give me all that shit. Load me up.
I'm all about it. I thought you were gonna say Deus Ex actually.
Oh, again, that's outside of my knowledge house. So
Oh, it was like year 2001 Game of the Year. It's a really cool like cyberpunk. You're like a secret agent. Think of like GoldenEye with nanobot augments.
man, how did I fucking miss that one?
This is such a good game. And then they made number 3 for the PS3, and it was amazing. It
Okay.
actually half the game was set in Detroit.
Oh, no shit.
Yep, it was super
So
cool.
yeah, that's a must buy for you.
Oh yeah, dude, I was over the moon for this game. Sorry, I got way off topic. The
That's
Shadowrun's
alright.
cool.
Little
Um,
sidebars, never a bad thing.
you actually mentioned one of the things in that briefly that I wanted to talk about. What do you think about like current use of force policy and like do you think it's like good, it's bad, it needs to be like redone? Like what are your thoughts on that? I'll just say loosely before I get into more specific questions.
It's such a very large package to try and
Yeah.
unpack because there's so many facets of use of force. Um, I mean, generally, as the overall, I would say most use of force or the general use of force policies are good.
Mm,
Um, it's tough because the biggest thing, well, it's hard to give a general answer on like, yeah, it's all great or no, it's crap. Because
sure.
again, it's such a situational and when it comes to application of use of force or using force on an individual to affect an arrest or to stop them from escaping to affect an arrest,
Mhm.
it's such a complicated issue because there's so many dynamic things happening. Um, and that's why use of force is looked at from a reasonable officer's perspective and not the hindsight quarterback Monday morning quarterback view.
Sure.
And I think that's important because those situations are it's like I said, it's a very dynamic and stressful adrenaline filled situation. It's tough to say. Yeah, it's not a very cookie cutter thing. I mean, obviously, you have rules that apply when you use force,
Sure.
but when it comes down to it, it's so hard to just say, yeah, every shooting by a cop should look like this. It's hard to say that, or every use of force, because I mean, not every use of force is a deadly use of force. Obviously, there's
Sure.
pepper spraying, baton, or tasing and stuff like that. So
Sure. Um I guess the only thing that I for lack of a better way to say it that I didn't like care for in that explanation would be like the description of that it's like an adrenaline filled thing. Like I feel like you could say the same for like the person on the other end. That it's like super adrenaline filled for like the citizen too. But like we don't it feels like that's not something that's talked about very much. Like it seems like it's justifiable for an officer to act in a way that would be in accordance with their adrenaline, but not so much the person engaging with the cop. It seems like the cop can fall back on, I was in a high stressful, high adrenaline situation, um, so therefore I get a little bit more leniency, but the individual is not granted the same sort of grace.
Well, and that's tough. And typically, so
If you think that's an
the
unfair framing, go you can mention that too.
yeah, and I think maybe it's a little misspeaking on my part because it comes down to so it's a reasonable officer or standard is what use of force reviews and looking at are held to. So
Uh,
it's would an officer in their same shoes with the same training make the same decision? So adrenaline typically doesn't play into it in terms of the review of force. I will
sure.
say from my own personal experience, I mean, obviously in the moment, like adrenaline's a thing. I mean, you're in a fight
Sure.
sometimes for your life. But when it comes to the use of force, you still can make sound decisions with adrenaline. But so to frame that better, it's from the reasonable officer standard of somebody with the same training, same knowledge, same experience would make the same decision if those option or that situation was presented to them.
So under that framework, would a less trained officer be granted more leniency in their use of force than at, like, let's say this kid is like 2 weeks out of the academy, he ends up hurting somebody who maybe didn't end up getting a charge or something, because, like, let's say he made a mistake and he used use of force in a way that wouldn't normally be, that like a cop who had been like on for a year, let's say, would have done. Is he going to be held to like a different standard than a cop who had been there for a year?
No, because it's experience obviously plays into it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I haven't personally been in use of force or I haven't done use of force reviews myself.
Sure.
So I don't think that the experience so much plays into it. Because I mean, everyone at the very base level of being an officer has the training of their respective academy, plus usually like an FTO, field training officer experience. So, I mean, obviously, some guys on FTO use force and stuff like that, but it's all based on like your training and an officer's base knowledge of the laws and the
Oh.
situation that they're presented with. Um,
Oh shit! I just realized that this is mislabeled.
oh, yeah, I'm not. Oh, yeah, I'm not Darth Dawkins, so
No, thank God. I fucking hate that
yeah.
guy.
Yeah, I threw up your Twitch, so I do see that.
Shit.
There you go.
There we go.
That's
It was
better. I'm not.
I typed it in fresh too. I hope I didn't get people coming here to hear Darth Dawkins. That was just round one and round two, and we're done with him.
Yeah. Sorry to disappoint, but I'm not some raging asshole from what I understand.
The worst. Yeah, literally the worst. Also, my most popular YouTube videos by far, but just the worst.
Well, I guess whatever works, right?
Yeah, I think
Um,
people like to watch him just to see the fucking his dumb shit.
it's like reality TV. People like drama and stupid shit.
Yeah, dude, he's got it. He's a raging narcissist, dude.
I'm gonna have to check those videos out more in depth. I got like 2 minutes into I think the second one. I'm like, I don't know if I can do this.
I don't blame you. Every person that I like know has said to me, I got angry listening to him.
Yeah,
Um,
the whole like I don't know, whole debate thing is yeah. I'd rather just share my opinions as we talked about before. I'm here to offer my perspective on stuff and
Yeah, like I approach
stuff.
Darth Dawkins with the mentality of like we have strong differences of an opinion. We're going to debate this. Whereas you, I'm sort of just looking to hear your opinion about things.
Sure.
And speaking of, I'm sure that you know what the rhetoric behind this next thing is. So when I ask you what your feelings on it are, I don't mean like face value, but what they actually mean by it. Like, What would you say to people that like are on the like the ACAB camp?
I think it's misinformed, I would say.
And like
Uh,
you understand what they mean by that, right? They're not saying all cops are bad just by like by proxy of being a cop you're bad, right?
well, so I understand ACAB to be all cops are bastards, but so I guess
Oh,
we should clarify the meaning behind that,
I think
because
that's just a bit more of
ACAB
a
usually,
nasty spin on it.
yeah, well, usually right next to ACAB is fuck 12, from the graffiti that I say, or I'm sorry, that I see. So
Oh, I'm not
um,
familiar. What's fuck 12?
fuck 12. So 12 is a common or is a slang term for police.
Oh,
So
okay.
if you ever look at some of the graffiti that has and does happen during, protests and riots that have been happening, you
Mm-hmm.
see ACAB, which in my understanding is all cops are bastards,
Sure.
or you could say all cops are bad. I mean,
Sure.
maybe they mean that, but usually right next to it is, fuck 12, and then like, dead pigs are good pigs, and or good pigs are dead pigs and stuff like that. So usually ACAB, fuck 12 always go along with like, you know, not very good connotations.
Sure.
So it's hard for me to say that there's any credence behind any of that, or positive light on that.
So then let me put it in the framing that is my understanding of the ACAB argument.
Sure.
My understanding of the all cops are bad argument is that if it's sort of like a logical conclusion argument from the people that are making it. The idea here is that all cops are bad because the good cops aren't arresting the bad cops.
Well, uh, yeah, and again, I think that's misinformation and being misinformed. I mean, when it comes to like arresting other cops, like
Mm-hmm.
if some cop comes in and like punches me or off duty or something like that, because usually, so we'll go with off duty for now. Like, I'm gonna arrest him. Like, you broke the law, you assaulted a peace officer, or if you are drunk and disorderly, I'm gonna give you a ticket. That's just how the law works. So cops arrest cops. Now, when it comes to other situations, like you look at, uh, like when it comes to other situations like Minneapolis, which you know, it, it's a one, it's an impossible position for those cops to just like straight arrest that dude, because enough of a there wasn't enough there just to haul all the dude off in cuffs. That was something that needed to be charges referred and then arrested afterwards. That's not a dynamic situation where an immediate arrest would need to be made. So
So two things. One, I'm not super good with geography. Which incident are we talking about? Is that the George Floyd?
George Floyd, yes.
Okay. Um, so two, why would that have to be referred? This is just coming from pure ignorance on my end. I'm not like trying to press you or pin you down here or anything like that. I'm just trying to
Right,
understand.
because when you look at it,
Because like when I look at it
um,
from on the video, to me it looks super
sure,
bad.
it does, and
Me with no understanding of how policing works, it feels like if I was in those shoes, like I would feel compelled to like one to have stopped the guy from doing what he was doing, but also to then like if I couldn't or for whatever reason I would feel compelled to try to take legal action, if not just to cover my own ass, but also to just like this felt like a criminal act happening to me.
sure. So my take on it again, uh, the the guy over his back was I forget his name off the top of my head. Um, but yeah, dude's a giant piece of shit, and just the
We're talking
complete
about the
lack.
officer.
Yes,
Okay,
hundred
just
percent.
making sure we're not talking about George Floyd.
Nope.
Okay.
George Floyd was no angel, but it didn't deserve like a fucking street death sentence.
Sure.
Now, the alternative to that is, there's varying reports and questionable reports on his toxicology. And did he actually die by asphyxiation? Did he die by drug overdose? Did he die by a combination of both? Uh,
Sure.
I think that might still remain to be seen. But at the very least, so with that incident in particular,
Hmm.
that officer should have been tagged out. So George Floyd was resisting because
Hmm.
they initially took him into custody, tried to get him in the car, and it's my opinion, strictly my opinion from
Sure.
seeing, with the fentanyl that's potentially in the system, that maybe he was starting to overdose before he went in the car and was starting to freak out, possibly.
Sure.
So then, he's refusing to go in the car or whatever and was resisting and struggling. And at that point, they just took him down and were waiting for backup to try and get him in or transport or whatever. I'm not 100% sure why they were just sitting there waiting.
Sure.
But the officer, you know, he should have been tagged out by one of the other, two or three guys who were there for like the whole incident. I think there was like at least two of them, maybe three, that were there for like the entire thing.
Hmm.
So that's when you have to step up and say, listen, I got this. Because it was, I mean, one of them was like a rookie. I think he was like on for like 2 weeks or
So,
less, or maybe 2 months.
do you think this was like a
So
problem with like a hierarchy of command that was on site there? Was
yeah,
was the,
because
was the guy who was doing it? Was he like the officer in charge?
I don't know if he was necessarily the. I mean,
Yeah, I'm
I
not
think
familiar
he was
enough
the.
either.
I think he was the most seasoned, if I'm not mistaken. I
Okay.
believe he was the most seasoned, and then there was another guy, like he had like well over a decade, and then there was another guy with like a couple years, or a couple of the guys had a couple years, and one of them I know had like less than years, like months or weeks that he was on duty. So I mean, it's almost an impossible position of like, well, if this guy has like a decade and he's still on him, and then the other two guys with a few years aren't doing anything. It's really tough position to be in. I hope to God that I'm never in a position like any of those officers. I can hopefully guarantee that I would never be the one guy kneeling on him. Because I mean, when you uh, when you have the situation where you arrest somebody, they're in your custody.
Hmm.
Um, they are under your care now because you have seized them. You have seized their person. You are responsible for their safety and well-being,
Hmm.
and that responsibility was not taken into full effect by the main officer, in my opinion.
The main officer being the one that did the kneeling.
Yeah, let me get his name real quick just to
I
super
know I'm gonna
verify.
know it as soon as you say it.
I will too, but Chauvin. That's right, Derek
Yeah, yeah,
Chauvin.
there you go. Yeah, yeah.
So specifically Derek Chauvin, like assuming he is the arresting or officer in charge, and he's obviously the guy on his back kneeling on him,
Hmm.
like you need to be able to maintain your subject and care for them. Like there was one incident where I had uh, a guy was leaving. He was deemed not safe to leave by a doctor or needed to be evaluated. So he was on a temporary detention order, so we had to stop him from leaving property.
Uh-huh.
He tried to basically juke past my partner. So it was deemed that he was unsafe to leave, so we had to take him into custody to be evaluated. And so my partner ended up taking him down. We placed him in handcuffs. Unfortunately, the guy lost control of his bowels.
Oh
So
no.
before we got him inside, we sat him on the bench. My partner actually got baby wipes from the car and cleaned human poop off of his feet and out of his shoes.
Oh
And I
man.
went and got a blanket to drape over behind him as to not embarrass him to walk him back.
That's real good. Not
Um,
only his safety, but his dignity too.
yeah, that's always my main concern is treating people like humans, because even if they're under arrest, they're still humans.
Sure.
Uh, you know, that's tough sometimes, especially depending on the severity of the crime. But you're not there to be the judge. You're there to arrest or detain on probable cause.
I really like that.
So
The you're not supposed to be there to be the judge. I really like that. I also
No.
really don't like the rhetoric. I hear from a lot of people that like just because you broke the law, that there's like this right to treat you like an animal, and then
No.
also, but like treat you like an animal, but expect you to act like a civilized human being too. It's this really weird double talk that like that probably more than anything else. Um, when we talk about these sort of interactions, save for like gross misuse of force or whatever, really get under my skin.
Yeah, and it's not. I mean, I consider myself to be a good cop,
Sure.
and bad cops are bad for good cops, and I don't think. And going back to like the main topic or subject of like the ACAB, the all cops are bastards or all cops are bad,
Yeah.
because good cops don't arrest bad cops. I think that's a false narrative,
Hmm.
um, and I think that a lot of it is just a lack of understanding sometimes of the use of force and of laws, because not saying, and I've, as I hopefully have clearly established before, I firmly don't believe that cops are above the laws, but there are specific laws that apply to police and the enforcement of laws, and sometimes there, the law, the way it applies to a citizen does not apply to the same way that it applies to as an officer conducting or discharging their duties.
Sure. So I guess that leads in really good to like, do you think that there needs to be any reform on like qualified immunity laws?
Uh,
Like, do you
well,
think that they can? Do you think they have the potential to incentivize more reckless behavior, knowing that like you kind of have this catch-all to like
I don't.
safety net?
You know what? In my personal opinion, I believe that if you tear away qualified immunity outright,
Hmm.
the good and the bad officers aren't going to want to do the job. Simply because the qualified immunity usually comes in with acting under good faith and good intent.
Hmm.
If I'm discharging my duties under good faith or not, like, for instance, if a doctor or if somebody says like, "Don't let that guy go, he's going to kill himself," and then I tackle the guy and break his arm or something on accident,
Sure.
I was acting under the knowledge that if I didn't stop this individual from leaving, that he might harm himself. And then if it turns out to be false, well, it's like, well, if I don't have that protection to discharge my duties under, with good intent, then why would I even stick my neck out there to do that if I know I can be sued and civilly, held held liable civilly? I'm just gonna let the guy go.
Sure. So I guess I'm definitely not talking about. I mean, well, at least I'm not necessarily talking about removing it outright. But when I think of the context in which qualified immunity was first put into play, um, and I think about like how broadly it covers and like how it can get it has the potential to get really weaselly at times. Like I read this report about a cop had chased somebody who was attempting to flee, and he shot him in a creek. Uh, and because the case that they tried to use against him wasn't a creek, it was a stream. Since it wasn't exactly the same, the guy had gotten let off. Um, so like I don't know enough about qualified immunity to say that it should be taken away completely, but I feel like with some of the stuff I've read, I personally feel like there should be some kind of reform to it. Because it seems like it seems to me that it leaves the door open for some really weaselly things that I think aren't that. Well, for one, it leads to super bad press for cops when people can see some of these instances and know that like this is like something that like because not if I can read it too, then I know other cops can read it too. And it just seems like there's like this at least temptation of corruption that's like gonna be there when you know that like the law can kind of bend in this way.
Well, and it's not. It really. It's tough because I mean you can only act as good as your information, um, and the training and the decisions that you make. And I mean, there's different. I mean, qualified immunity, so to speak, isn't one necessarily like law of the land. There's different aspects to it. There's different laws within it that fall under like the qualified immunity.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say that I am a legal person in terms of like legal expert of qualified immunity.
Mm-hmm.
My understanding of it is if you're acting in good faith uh, and discharging your duties, then it protects you from like the civil liability of your actions. So I think as a whole, qualified immunity is good because otherwise, I mean, you're super opening yourself up to like just bullshit, in my opinion. Like frivolous civil lawsuits. It would just open up the door for that, and then either cost the departments, the state, the government a shitload of money, or even the officers. So why would you put yourself in that position where you're gonna be paying money for like mistakes that are made out not made with like or bad intent.
I guess my primary concern is that it seems like when somebody tries to challenge it very rarely, um, it very rarely goes in the favor of the people um, who are trying to get, like, in their view, justice for something that was done wrong.
Mhm.
And actually, oh man, the optics of this are really bad. This is from like CRS reports, Congress.gov. Um, so it was derived as a part of interpretation of the Civil Rights Act of 1871, which was also known as the Ku Klux Klan Act. Um, so yeah, and in my understanding of it, that's which fits into my understanding what the original qualified immunity uh, laws were interpreted as back then was that it was basically there was a lot of tensions between like black and white communities, and the cops. The cops didn't want to be able to get sued by black people is basically what it was back then.
Right, and obviously it's evolved,
Sure.
fortunately, since then.
Yeah, yeah.
To be more of a buffer between uh frivolousness and protection of officers just trying to do their job. I mean, that's where it comes to you know better training and better quality of people to hire would mean that you would have less and less instances of that qualified immunity acting badly, I guess you
Sure.
could say. I mean,
Performing is not intended.
right. It's impossible to take out all bad cops, just as it's impossible to take out all bad insert profession X. Uh, so yes, I do say duty. Sorry, or duties. Actions, enforcement. I'll try and change it up for you.
You can keep saying duty. You can ignore him. Um, so it seems like to me, I think the key word here is good faith.
Hmm.
I think that's the key word of focus for both of us, and I think that without like a strong like faith in like without a strong community faith in the police, like it's really hard to think that good faith is being practiced a lot of the time. And it also it seems like good faith could be defined like rather arbitrarily as well. Like it seems to me like in this instance, good faith is going to be like whatever the officer in question says it is. Do you think that's fair?
No, because I think it's looked at from a more objective perspective than just the officer's, this individual officer's perspective. There's internal reviews that come with that. um, but when it comes to, boy, I
Aren't
lost
those
my
reviews
train of
usually
thought.
done in like interdepartmentally?
Yeah, it's what you typically within the department, unless it arises to like an outside agency Like some states have like one state investigation um, force or something like that.
Yeah, so one of the things that I heard, I was in a Discord for a while, right when the protests were going big in Detroit, and it was kind of like the gaming community that I'm in. I live right next to the largest game shop in Michigan, and they some of the people were talking about maybe having like a community elected board to go over these things instead of having it interdepartmental. It certainly increased the optics, but I also know that there's going to be some trade off with the police too. Do you think that like the trade off for like the optics and the faith of the community would be worth having like a community elected board to be a part of these investigations? Or I've heard arguments going as far as that the community it should be a community driven, like a community board driven investigations, all the way to they should be working alongside a community board, a community elected board to handle these investigations when involving qualified immunity. Do you think that either of those situations would be a good trade off for like the optics and the trust in the police force?
I think anything where the community is involved in terms of transparency would be a good thing. Do I think that it should be a fully community driven thing? Maybe not. I think it should be a hand in hand type
Sort of like a partnership.
situation. Yeah, a partnership, because there's stuff where, you know, it helps to have I guess an insider's perspective or knowledge into some of these things, and that's where I think the partnership uh, would benefit instead of just a strictly community driven situation.
Sure. I guess to me it would seem like I would probably think it would be ideal from my perspective to maybe have like if it was like a 10-seat deal, two of those seats could be held by like current or former officers.
Yeah, and it would vary greatly community to city. A lot of it would be driven on uh, what they see fit. But kind of going back and touching on what you're talking about, how can you act on good faith when nobody has faith in you? And
Yeah.
I really think that comes to just education and being informed. I think a lot of, unfortunately, the good news story is the hyper reactive, like, oh my God, look at this 5 second clip. This dude, like, whatever. It's the 5 second news clip or the 5 second Facebook clip that gets all the attention with zero context. And so then obviously knee jerk reaction is, oh my God, that was horrible. But then you don't see the 2 minutes leading up to it of like, oh, okay, I see why you can do that. Because they can't show the 2 minute video, they can show you the 5 second. It's all about framing. So a lot of the shit that happens is all like, let's try and judge this entire situation on these 5 seconds.
Sure.
And I hate that to death. Sometimes it is face value, but a lot of times there's some sort of context that is greatly underrepresented in some of these videos.
Well, I mean, I would probably say that for pretty much anything. You usually don't want to get just a small portion of a situation. You don't want to get just one side of a situation, which is exactly why I'm, talking to you about this kind of thing. Because I've seen a lot of things and I read a lot of things, and a lot of things don't sit well with me. But it's really hard for me to have a conversation with somebody at the other end of this because they're usually not cops. They're usually just people that have really, like, shitty hot takes. Without any real justification for them. So that's why I think it's more important to talk to you and people like you.
Yeah, and I'm by no means, especially in qualified immunity, anywhere near an expert. I'm pretty under-informed on the topic, I would admit, but like I said, my own perspective is, if I can't act without being able to make a mistake, then why act at all?
Sure.
I guess is what it boils down to.
Sure. So do you know anything about like the Detroit protests at all, or are you just more local and like national ones?
Yeah, I more know about my own local and then also just the national. I don't know specifically the protests or what they evolved or didn't evolve into in Detroit, so I can't really speak to that topic personally.
I gotcha. I always so like I try to watch as many of them as I can, and it always I think the thing that bothers me the most is like the tear gassing and things like that. Um, do you think that like these things have been handled pretty well by the police? I'm not when I say this too, like I'm definitely not talking about the unmarked federal agent vans. That's a whole other shitstorm.
Fair enough. Uh, so the tear gas situation or debate or issue, um, it's really so it is used as a crowd control agent,
Sure.
and unfortunately, it's near impossible from I haven't had to do I haven't been involved in these instances with any sort of riot control. I've only done riot control overseas in a enemy prisoner of war camp. So I have a different I've done riot control, but not in terms of in the streets situation.
Were you guys able to use
But
tear gas there?
no, we used mostly we used pepper spray,
Mm-hmm.
pepper fogger, so it's like pepper spray but in like fog form, and
Gotcha.
pepper ball guns. So it's like little paintballs, but they explode with pepper, so it's
Gotcha.
kind of cool. But I know the whole, and I think it's honestly silly argument in my opinion of like, oh wait, well we can't use tear gas in war, so why can we use it against our citizens? Uh, is a common thing, which I think is silly, and I don't know if you, and I don't mean to offend if you hold that opinion, but the reasoning behind that is we don't use tear gas in war because it can be mistaken as, nerve gas or something worse, and then could provoke,
Larger
a
scale
measured
conflict.
response. Yeah. So that's why it's not used in war. It's not because it's like crazy inhumane. And in
I
my
didn't know that.
opinion, what's that?
I did not know that.
Okay, so
Is
that's
that
that's why that's why it's not used in a wartime situation.
huh?
And so when it comes to using tear gas on citizens in crowd control, is once a crowd starts to get out of control, it's impossible or dangerous either for the officers or the individuals in the crowd or both to try and pluck out the bad actors.
Mm-hmm.
Because usually in a crowd, most of them are, or it's so when you have like a riotous situation or unruly crowd, it acts almost as it's a one entity. So you have to disperse it as one entity. You have to get rid of it and break it up and get them away so the bad actors can't instigate the people who are just hanging out there and, oh well, the guys behind me are throwing rocks, so I'm gonna throw rocks. Or somebody threw a Molotov, like, yeah, fucking, get all riled up or whatever. But when it comes to tear gas, it's better than like hand-to-hand combat, and it's safer than like hand-to-hand combat.
Sure.
And honestly, it's a better optic than hand-to-hand combat. Uh, Throwing tear gas at them versus going in there, shield to shield, line to line, cracking skulls with batons, than just using chemical agents that, for the most part, have very limited effects and can move a crowd out of an area, especially when it's getting dangerous for people or otherwise.
I gotcha. What else we got here? So I think I just got a. Yeah, well, yeah, I got a couple still. Yeah. Do you deal with any like people like? Do you deal with like any personal attacks for being a cop during all this,
Yeah.
or like your family members? Did they suffer from it too?
Well, so in terms of well, so not quite personal attacks. It got to the point, which in social media, you know, I had a couple family members, close family members posting. So like it was right after the George Floyd incident. Every day was, you know, look at this video of a shitty cop. You know, all cops are bastards and yeah, pro anarchy and all this shit. So I had to like just unfriend them and take a break from them for a while.
Sure.
I end up, you know, approaching them, talking to them, talking out, like, listen, you know, that all that shit is like, you know, you could sit there and try and, you know, snipe bad cops every day, all day, and you could probably do it because there's so many cops and so many incidents. But you're also not posting the, you know, 99 or, you know, 99% of the good shit that they're doing. So yeah, I mean, but in terms of like a personal attacks or threats or threats against family members, I haven't experienced that. I have a pretty supportive like, you know, situation around me for my position, so I haven't experienced too much of it.
See-
But you certainly feel it through public opinion or what's being glorified by the media, at least.
So like when you go out and about, you don't ever get any like flack from like random people for being a cop or anything like that. You ain't got nobody spitting on you or cussing you out just for being a cop. More.
So well, yeah, I mean that happens when I'm in uniform at work. When I'm not at work, I am pretty low key about it. I don't have the old Punisher sticker on the back of my truck or anything. So
Did you used to?
yeah, no, I never.
It was so specific.
No. You see it a lot, like the stupid Mona Labe and, you know, Punisher, we're sheepdogs. Like, it's so silly. But no, I try and not draw attention, and I only tell people. I usually casually don't mention that I'm a police officer too often, especially now.
Sure.
But you know, at work, like nobody's spit on me, fortunately, which is, you know, a felony assault for, you know, assaulting a peace officer with bodily fluids.
Sure.
But you know, I've had people like fuck you, fuck cops, you know, fuck this shit, all that stuff, and
You'd probably expect
you
that
know.
even if this wasn't going on to some degree, though, right?
Sometimes you get it, but usually it's been a little more brazen since
Sure.
I would say since the whole George Floyd Minneapolis riots.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be, you know, maybe sometimes dirty looks and stuff like that, but it's definitely, I've seen it certainly more now than I ever have. I don't think anybody's really outwardly said "fuck you," short of like you know, I'm arresting you and now
Sure.
fuck you and fuck pigs. So
Sure.
it's like, but just like some casual random guy walking by, you know, saying fuck 12. I'm like, okay, thanks, buddy. Have a good day. So as long as you're not causing a you know, disruptive scene, like, I don't know. I let it roll off. I worked in corrections at federal and state level, so I have a pretty thick skin when it comes to that kind of shit.
That's good. And I'm glad you're not dealing with it a whole bunch. You know, from every interaction I've had with you, you seem like a good guy, and you probably don't deserve any of that.
I like to think not.
So I got 3 left on my list here. I'll
Sure.
let you pick. Did you look into that Elijah? Shit. What was the last name?
Elijah, is it? I did not, unfortunately.
Gotcha.
I did
Okay.
not have time to really get into that one, so I would be kind of underinformed on that one.
It's Elijah McClain.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd still really like it sometime in the future if you do get into it. We can have another talk. I'd really like to hear your take on that, because like I said, when I saw that, I read about it and I was just like, "There's no way." Well, I mean, it wasn't like there's no way. I read it and I was like, I have to go watch this video now, because these claims are like this transcript that I'm reading here is so horrific. Like it almost was like I was almost at a moment of disbelief. It's like it's not like I don't believe you, but like I got to see this for myself. And then I did, and I was like, holy shit. Definitely one of the more horrifying things, I think, like from an optics perspective. And I'll move away from it quickly since I know you didn't know a lot about it. From the optics perspective, this is considerably more horrifying than the George Floyd situation. It was like I just remember, like, just reading it, I just sat there and just like couldn't believe it. It's not like I don't like it's not like I don't believe you. It's just like, so like, kind of like hearing like in the like inversely, it'd be like hearing your buddy say like I won the lottery, like you'd be like, oh, show me the ticket. It's not like I don't believe you, but like this is just so outside of what I expected to run into here.
Sure.
You just can't help but be uh, like mystified, or in this case like demystified, to the point to where like you just have to go straight to the source at that point. Yeah, it read like it read like fiction. So if you ever do get a chance to look into that, holy shit. And like I know too, like whenever you like you're always gonna see really good pictures of anybody who's killed and stuff, but like, damn dude, this motherfucker played like violin for cats and shit, I guess.
Hmm.
Just seemed like a pretty cool. And like if I seen this guy too, like I would think like he looked like an introvert nerdy guy.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and I'd seen, I think like the whole 3 minute thing leading up to like his interaction and stuff like that. He
Mhm.
didn't seem very compliant, which, you know, obviously it's just because somebody's not compliant doesn't mean it needs to lead into something like this. But
Yeah.
lack of compliance usually leads to more suspicion.
Mhm.
And they were, from my understanding, approaching him because of some sort of suspicion, or call of like a suspicious individual or something. Um, but then I guess, yeah, they held him while the paramedics injected him with like ketamine, which is kind of weird.
Never heard of
So-
that before. Have you heard of that before? Is that how commonplace is that? Like to your
Well, I mean,
knowledge.
the chemical restraint is a thing.
Yeah, but like we talked about in private too. Like I would have thought Haldol would be the go-to. Like I know if
Right,
somebody's
and-
popping off in the nut house, they stick them with the Haldol and they pass right the fuck out. They're no threat to anybody.
Yeah, it's usually a Benadryl, Halidol, and something else. They call it a B52. So it's
Because they're just bombing them, huh?
yeah.
That's funny.
But it says, and this is according to Wikipedia, so take it with a grain of salt.
Sure.
But allegedly, it says the EMS providers, or in Colorado, EMS providers are allowed to use ketamine to treat excited delirium. So they must have determined. So one of the officers can be heard telling EMS that he was acting crazy and definitely on something, which is, I don't know, that's suspect from what I recall of the couple minutes of video that I watched. And that he attacked him with incredible crazy strength when they tried to restrain him. Yeah, that's pretty suspect.
Yeah, especially you look at the size of this guy. He's real tiny.
Yeah, 220 it says.
He's
Or
220?
No, I'm sorry. They estimated that he weighed 220, and he weighed 140.
Yeah, I was gonna say, there's no way. This guy must be a monster under this flannel if he's weighing
No.
220. Holy shit!
Misread that.
Yeah, they gave
So,
him
yeah,
the ketamine as a dose for a guy who weighs 220.
Correct.
So 80 pounds off. That's like a small woman weight off.
Pretty much. Yeah, so that's a whole lot. It looks like a whole lot of mistakes made in that situation, top to bottom.
Yeah. And then so I gotta mark this one off real quick. So now let's see, we got that and that. So I heard some interesting stuff that I hadn't heard before until just recently. Some more interesting takes about the Breonna Taylor thing. What do you think about that? Because I've heard some there's some unique arguments that don't come up in like any of these other like use of force cases. They came up with Breonna Taylor, and I think are really interesting. Like the fact that but also too one that I felt like isn't talked about at all, but that would have been my perspective. Um, so I mean, you definitely know about the Breonna Taylor shooting, right?
Yes, I would say I know a base media knowledge. I really haven't dug super deep into it, but I would say I have a base knowledge of it.
Okay, so I've consumed a fair bit of information about this one. So the cops announced, although one out of like however many neighbors said that they heard the cops announce, a bunch of other neighbors didn't. I don't necessarily think that this means that they didn't announce themselves. When it comes to whether or not somebody heard something, like a positive seems to be a lot stronger than a negative. It's easy to mishear, to not hear something. It's a lot harder to hear something that didn't happen.
Sure.
However, if somebody's kicking down my door, so like the idea, so like some people argue that because they announced themselves, even though it was a no-knock warrant, they kicked the door in and said police, that the person had no justification in firing on them. That this seems to imply to me that if any burglar wants to break into my house, all they have to do is announce that they are the police, and it should be expected by me, by society, if this is how we expect society to behave when the police do it, that I should lay down my arms and just and not, without being able to go and identify them, I should not assume anything is wrong then. And that's something that I haven't heard anybody bring up, which is crazy to me. Like, just because you announce yourself as the police, like, I don't believe you. Like, you're breaking into my house in the middle of the night. I haven't committed any crime. Like, this is crazy. Yeah, I'm going to think that you're not the police, because why would police do this? And I'm probably going to open fire if I have a firearm. Do
Yeah,
you think that's fair?
Uh, it's I don't know. Where do you? How, that's a tough one. So, from a police perspective, if we announce that it's police, I mean, do you get rid of even the knocking warrant of knocking and bashing the door in? To, you know, is there do you give a reasonable amount of time for them to respond? But then you also have to play to the aspect of, depending on the situation, I don't know what the original warrant was for. Is the guy believed to be armed and dangerous? So do you risk the fact that he may be armed? I mean, like I said, there's so many aspects to that.
Yeah, and like I said too, I found some interesting stuff out about it beforehand. Like, I guess like her ex-boyfriend, who they were looking for there, who wasn't there at all. I guess he had rented a car in her name, and like they found a body in it and stuff. She had been cleared of all charges and stuff, but like the individual they were looking for was pretty dangerous. I don't know why they thought he was there, because he wasn't. But so there was definitely that. I don't think that like her dying was justified or anything like that. Just to like just clearly illustrate my position on that. But
Yeah, and I don't think I mean, it's not justified in the aspect of, you know, she was not killed, or she shouldn't have been killed. But then, where do you where do you put any blame, if any, on the guy who's shooting blindly through the door, the boyfriend or whatever, who sparked the action? You know, if
well, is it
that
really him
question.
that's sparking the action though? Like, it's kind of like an argument of self-defense, really, right?
I don't know. Did they bust the door down, then he fired? Because it's my understanding, I could be wrong, that the original boyfriend, or the boyfriend of Taylor, shot through the door blindly at the cops. I could be wrong on that.
Yeah, my understanding is that they broke into the apartment.
Okay.
Timeline of...
And there's also, I'm trying to find another. Did you see not to try and throw you off topic, but it's actually within the same vein of the Taylor incident. It was like at a I don't know if it was an apartment complex or a hotel complex. The Somebody called in like kind of a bogus domestic on a couple, and the cops come up and they do the most gentle knock and say police,
Oh,
and the guy comes out, gun to his side, because apparently it's in like a shady fucking area, and you hear drop the gun, and he's crouching down to place the gun down, and then the cop shoots him.
oh
Now
gosh, no.
I need to find that because it is terribly heartbreaking, and it's I think it actually kind of shows both sides to this of like, you knocked, did you say police loud enough? Did you think you said police loud enough? You thought it was just some casual call. Guy comes out with a gun. Oh shit. But then it's like it's that 1 to 2 second decision that unfortunately ended the guy's life, and it's such a heartbreaking video.
No, I thought you were gonna talk to me about a different one that I saw, which was at a hotel. But no. But if you get me that, I'd be happy to take a look at it. So I guess wow, this actually got worse when I looked at it. So apparently they came in plain clothes too.
Okay.
They're in plain clothes. They used a battering ram to force open the green door with a number 4 hanging on it. Blah blah blah. That doesn't matter. At which point the police say they were met with gunshots. So even the police are saying that they used the battering ram first, and then there was shots fired. So another argument that I heard recently too is that why would he have fired if he knew that it was the police? Like, that's a losing battle. They're just breaking down the door. And also too, the guy who had a licensed gun and no criminal record, he called 911 and asked for help because he thinks that somebody's breaking into their house. He says somebody kicked in the door, shot my girlfriend. So like he's not even illustrating to the police that he's calling that it's the police there. So I mean, I think like in this sort of high octane situation, no way this guy is going to be like covering his ass in that respect. You know what I mean? You get woken up, you're firing shots, and your girlfriend gets killed. If you think it's the cops, you need to get your guys, man. You know what I mean? It's not going to be helped. I think somebody's breaking into my house. It's not like he had time to plan this or anything.
Yeah. It's I mean that comes, I think, in a larger reform of you know, warrant and how to execute them, and depending on the situation of what you think is there. I mean, there's a lot to unpack with the Taylor one.
Yeah.
Because were the officers acting within law and policy? I think so, minus the guy who's like shooting all wild to the next door neighbor.
Sure.
But I think that is one of those more larger reforms that I think people talk about, of reforming criminal justice, is probably looking into that and how can that be avoided.
Yeah, I would say if nothing else, although other things as well, I would say that it makes this very, very solid case for ending no-knock warrants.
Yeah, probably. I mean, no-knock warrants may have their
Advantages.
places and advantages, obviously, depending on the situation. If there's some sort of like life or death situation.
Right.
But I mean, it seems like it would be something that you would rarely use.
Yeah, I would also think of a no-knock warrant being served by like a SWAT team, rather than plainclothed officers. Like it seemed like pretty much everything. Like Murphy's Law was in full effect here. Everything that could go wrong in a situation like this really went wrong. They did the no-knock. They were in plainclothes, which I didn't even know until I just looked that up. That really shocks me.
Yeah.
They broke the door in with the battering. It happened in the middle of the night, when you would assume that people would be sleeping. Shots were fired. There was nothing illegal even in the apartment, which I wouldn't accept a post hoc justification, anyways. But
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that one is
that's,
particularly bad to me.
I think that's a failure. Probably that's a failure of the larger system. Then uh, the the officers are doing what they are allowed to do within law and policy. I believe. Again, I'm not 100% sure of every fact of what the warrant was for. Where I thought there was like a missed address or some bullshit like that. But
Yeah, I think
assuming
that's
all
what was
that,
said at first, but I don't think that's the case anymore. I think that the
okay,
misaddressed argument was in reference, and I could be wrong still, was in reference to the fact that the guy who they were looking for didn't live there.
gotcha.
But also, too, I'm reading as of March 26th, the police union president said that releasing the guy who fired back, uh, like who fired when they broke the door down, was a slap in the face to everyone wearing a badge and has endangered the public.
Mm,
So in my perspective, this guy, like, what choice do you have? That's the kind of situation from all the knowledge he had at the time. If we talk about intent being part of the law, all the knowledge he had, he was acting in self-defense with the information we discussed at least.
sure, but then
Like,
that's also assuming that he didn't know that and I don't know. I think, and I could be wrong. I think that was like a known like drug dealing place. So does the guy not know that a bunch of drugs are being dealt out of there by the guy who wasn't there? Because I mean, when you insert yourself into those situations where you're involved or intertwined with like that stuff, there's an inherent risk and uh, culpability on your part to be involved in a situation like that.
well, I mean, from his perspective too, I think that you could say that like she wasn't dealing drugs, and that was like the old guy. He wasn't there anymore. So I
Sure.
mean, like I just like I said, if I'm speaking to like intent, like I don't think that he intended to wound police officers. I think he intended to dissuade somebody from breaking into their house. And then
Yeah,
once
and I
his
think
girlfriend was killed, he just knows that like somebody broke in, they killed my girlfriend, like I'm next.
it's probably it's an unpopular opinion in the law enforcement aspect, but if that guy truly believed that somebody was breaking into his house that was not the police, I guess can you blame him for opening fire?
Yeah, for
Because
real.
I'm telling you, if somebody broke my fucking door down and I didn't know who the fuck they were, I'm probably shooting them as well. So,
Yeah, you're gonna shoot first, ask
uh,
questions later, right?
yeah, if I feel like my life is threatened and if there's somebody fucking pounding my door down with a fucking battering ram and they didn't announce themselves clearly to me as police, then well, yeah, it's gonna end poorly for probably all of us. So, but I did. So by the way, I sent you that. I don't know. It's 7 minutes long, so maybe watch it and we can talk about it later at some point. But you want to talk about heartbreaking and even more so, in my opinion, than the Taylor situation. That one is it's pretty heart wrenching. It's bad.
I did see the one. There was a guy in a hotel.
This one's
I
out
don't
of
know if he
Arizona.
discharged the firearm, but the cops got called there, and it was a drunk guy, and he came out of his hotel room, and they gave him all kinds of crazy demands when he was like laying on the floor, like lay on the floor, put your hands up, crawl to me, like keep your legs crossed, and the dude was like you could just see like he's drunk and he's like trying to follow all these commands that the cops given him. He was unarmed at the time, and he's like I'm trying, and like I was just thinking like man, if I was sober, I'd have a hard time following these
Yes.
like contradictory, and then he just shot him, and then on the side of his rifle, which was withheld from the jury, his rifle said "you're fucked" on it too, which kind of expresses the kind of individual it certainly puts out the trigger happy vibe. And
Yeah,
then
you
seeing
should probably
that,
keep that as your personal firearm, not your duty firearm. So,
yeah, that was one of
but
the most horrifying to me. It really felt like he was
I've
trying to
seen
put this
that.
guy in a position to get shot.
I've seen that video, and that one's also pretty heartbreaking. But the one I sent you is pretty shitty. Again, because it kind of shows closer. The one where you're talking about, it's a little more finer cut as like that's super shitty. Like what the fuck? Because that officer's telling him, "Get down, crawl to me. Put your hands up though, but crawl to me on all four." Like
And
got super.
put your
fucking
feet over your feet.
Right, exactly.
It basically
Whereas this
gave him an
one-
impossible standard and then killed him for
Yeah.
not following it.
Yeah. And then the one I sent you, he comes out supposedly in some shady neighborhood for like a noise complaint. And the fucked up thing is the call was made to dispatch. Hey, there's a noise. I'm complaining about noise. Dispatch said, "Fuck off." Then he called back. He's like, "Hey, I'm complaining." Well, is it a domestic? He's like, "Well, yeah, if it gets the officers out here." So already
Sure.
you're on the fucking pretense of like a shitty call.
Sure.
But certainly watch that video and share that link with people or anybody, any of your followers. Or it's really
Yeah, I'll actually
it,
put that in the chat.
yeah, it shows. I can put the link if you'd like me to.
Oh yeah, go for it. Go ahead and throw the link in the chat. Cool.
So
And I'll
That
be sure to add it to
is-
the description of the YouTube video as well.
yeah, it's boy, is that it. I think that shows closer to the line of like that split decision judgment. And as you look at it outside, and Monday morning quarterback was not the right decision by the officer. But I don't know. Oh, so Dennis here saw that video, and it's that one sucks. It's shitty to watch. So
Yeah, I'm gonna have to take a look at that for sure. And then I guess I got one more thing on here.
sure.
So and I might have to elaborate on like my perception of this as well, like I did with ACAB. What do you think about the defund the police movement? Which, and I want to be really upfront, in nowhere have I ever seen it talking about. Maybe except for like some fringe idiots on social media who have no idea. Are they actually meaning like get rid of police or anything like that? And so when I say defund the police in the context of diverting some of the funds into other things to help alleviate the responsibility of police, because the perception is that police are being called to do things that police shouldn't be called to do, like dealing with mentally ill people, and then things of that nature. And also the defund the police movement also wants to decriminalize like victimless crimes such as like sex work and like low end drug charges and things like that.
So first of all, the fact that, and again, kind of leading back to the ACAB movement, if you will.
Yeah, I think it
Or
suffers from
brand.
bad marketing. This
Correct.
movement.
It needs to be rebranded, certainly. So if anything, you're almost making the argument to increase funding to police or increase funding to emergency services, because I mean, I'm sure there could be some restructuring done,
Mm-hmm.
but there should be more support for some of the calls that the officers need to go on. To give a little perspective, the where I'm at the VA, I have a wealth of mental health and social workers available to me.
Mm-hmm.
Just today, I went down to social work and I said, "Hey, I need a social worker. Like, this isn't quite illegal, and it's not quite like
On the up and up.
patient abuse type thing, but this
Sure.
is something that you should kind of deal with." So,
How valuable would you say that resource is to you, being able to have a social worker get involved with a situation?
I think when it's warranted, it's very helpful to have a social worker at your disposal, because a lot of the situations, and it may be more unique to the VA, a lot of the situations you get into, it's like it's just so crazy and complicated to where you know you need a mental health professional or a social worker to get involved to try and figure out what the best answer is, because the answer always isn't arrest somebody.
Sure. Do you think having
just-
that at your disposal? Sorry, go ahead.
Well, and it just kind of leaning back to like the whole defund the police thing. They should call it restructure the police, and you might get a little more traction.
Yeah, if
So
you,
I guess
I
that's
think
my
if they wanted
suggestion.
support for it, it was such a bad, framing of what they wanted, because I mean, don't get me wrong, it's catchy and it trended super duper fast. So in that
Sure.
respect, like from that respect from the marketing team, good job. But as far as actually trying to get your message out, and instead of getting like more support, you're getting so much blowback for shit that you're not even asking for. It's terrible.
Yeah.
Super super duper bad. Um, it it would almost be like a vet clinic trying to market euthanasia at like competitive rates, saying like we'll kill your puppies on the cheap. This is not, you
Right.
know, this is not the message that you're trying to put out there. You're gonna get a ton of people thinking that you're just on the like I want to murder dogs camp. Like
Sure.
what you're saying is technically true. Did like these words defund does mean not, you know, strip away all funding. However, it's not what it sounds like to anybody who's hearing it who isn't already like involved with what you're talking about. So it was super duper bad. But I do want to come and circle back to like, do you, how valuable like or I guess you've kind of expressed the value of having the social worker. Do you see a lot of value in having like uh, what the fuck's the word I'm looking for? Um, just like police in general having access to like their precincts having like active social workers staffed.
Yeah, I think that would be a huge benefit, to be able to call that resource in for some of these more complicated situations where it's, uh, you know, and I can't speak for outside departments. Some of them probably do have these resources available.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but in the instance of like social work, particularly, there's many instances where okay, a call leads into like some other messy shit of like, okay, where are these kids gonna go? And then that's where a social worker can come in and find like family members and stuff like that. Because usually the police get called and it's like, here, the initial call was a police call, but now here's a mental health and a social work and all this shit thrown into one. Like, you figure it out. It just, I've unpacked some really like sticky shit that's a little bit outside of what I'm trained for, but you kind
Yeah,
of
I
work
would
through it.
imagine so. I would imagine that you're not that there's not a whole lot of focus training on how to react to somebody who's having like a mental breakdown
Yeah,
as
and
opposed
again, the
to
the
somebody
VA
breaking the
is the
law.
exception.
Sure.
Is the exception to that.
Well, right. It was
In
right. So
terms
good to
of
ask you because you can see the divide between the VA training and like typical police training.
right, and part of um, a program we run is reaching out to local departments around us of
Hmm.
like, if you deal with somebody in a mental health crisis, call us because we'll help you out. Uh, so we try and lean or get those resources out to departments that, especially when it comes to like specifically dealing with people with like vets and
Hmm.
like PTSD and mental health crises. I've talked I talked to a guy off railroad tracks
Hmm.
because I had a connection with him and we were both vets and I had a good rapport with him, and so he had a fucking knife and I talked him into going to the train station. I said, okay, the officer's gonna come in now. Don't do anything crazy. Put the knife down, and I'll wait for you here at the hospital. And so I mean, it's shit like that some people don't feel comfortable with, I guess, dealing with. So
Yeah. Well, and even
uh,
not comfort, but knowing how to approach these things with the kind of sensitivity that it demands.
yeah, yeah, it's very there's a lot of that's where, like you mentioned, sensitivity or training in terms of mental health crisis. I mean, that's where like mental health professionals and social workers come in.
Hmm.
I mean, obviously, and I think we had discussed this off camera, so to speak, before, I think a couple days ago, but with just a mental health crisis doesn't excuse uh, having to deal with the situation from a law enforcement perspective.
Sure.
Like, if there's somebody having a mental health crisis and they're stabbing people,
Sure.
well,
Sure.
probably going to get shot. So, but I mean, when you scale that down, uh,
Yeah, like you talked about,
there's
there's a lot of
shitty.
arm waving and stuff like that. There's a lot of violent looking actions that aren't.
Yeah, and there's video. Oh man, I do want to share this video because you know, there's a lot of negative shit thrown on cops, and I would like to share one about a cop talking down a guy with a gun.
Yeah, sure. And I mean, I'd love to see more stuff like that
Yeah, and you see
because I
it.
know it happens.
Yeah, there's, and I think this might be a vet-to-vet type thing too, if I remember correctly.
And I will add too, my grandfather was a police officer here in Inkster. He just like on the other side of the city that I live in now. He was a
Uh-huh.
cop there for many years, and he was there. He was one of the first responders to a plane. A plane had crashed on the freeway
Oh
nearby
shit.
here. I think it was in the 70s. Yeah. I think he quit not too long after that. That was like horribly traumatizing. But I mean, I definitely know like the side of like good police officers, and I've talked to him about like certain things and how he would handle certain things. He was definitely more of a lenient cop. He was like there's no way around it. Like he was like the guy he dreamed of being like the detective and stuff. Like he was in it for like getting out of his car and chasing and grabbing the perp kind of guy. Like he wanted to catch like he wanted to catch the real bad guys out there. He wasn't so concerned about traffic stops and things like that. Let's put it that way. Like when like during the O.J. Simpson trials, the Casey Anthony trials, this guy was on the TV like 24/7 playing detective in his living room. That was the kind of guy he was. So like I definitely don't have like a certain like one pointed view of police officers. I definitely have like a lot more liberal takes on things, but at the same time too, I'm super open minded. I know everybody says that, but I even walked back my stance on the Kenosha shooter. um, I think that he's beyond stupid. um, but as far
Yes.
as like what constitutes a justified shooting and things like that, I was actually super uncomfortable when I heard the take, and then when I seen the morality broke down for me, I had to change my stance on it, which was really surprising to me. It's not something that I thought that I would be on that side of it, but I think that at least I'm not sure about the first one still. I had a debate with somebody, and I don't think that we resolved if he like what had happened in the first one. But I definitely felt like the second shooting was morally justified. The person aggressed somebody who was displaying lethal force, and you have to consent. Like when you aggress on somebody who's displaying lethal force, you're consenting to the consequences that this person might be willing to use that lethal force if you aggress on them. Because if you're displaying lethal force and somebody aggresses on you, you have to assume that they're willing to use lethal force on you. Otherwise, why would they be aggressing you?
Right.
Because like
Yeah, and I
if you're
think
going against a gun, you must have the intentions of using the same level of force to defeat the gun.
yeah. So the I'm bad at multitasking.
You're good, buddy.
Um, well, real quick before I delve into Kenosha, I'm posting a video now
Okay.
on your Twitch, and I'll send it to you as
You get
well.
all basically,
That is a very good example of an awesome cop who cares.
Mhm.
If you just listen to it and how the situation unfolds, like that is a standard of what cops should be held to.
Sure.
That's one of those tough situations that thank God ended out awesome.
Mhm.
But back to Kyle
Rittenhouse.
Rittenhouse.
Yeah.
So that first shooting, so I went super deep into like watching like that video and all the takes or angles of it.
Uh huh.
The first shooting, it's very unclear like what happens when they're playing Ring Around in the Rosie on that car or whatever.
Uh huh.
Like if the dude lunges at him or tries to. Supposedly, the deal was the dude got shot attempting to grab his rifle.
Sure. If somebody's trying to grab your gun, like you shoot, no doubt about
Right.
that.
Because, the obvious conclusion is that they take it. And then also that guy, I'm sure you saw, like, several minutes before is in a video where he's confronting like those militia quote unquote people saying like shoot me
Hmm.
N-word, shoot me. So it's like uh you know, I
Very
guess he was pretty
antagonistic.
serious. Yeah, I guess he was serious
Um,
about that. Um, but yeah, that again, that was the guy. He shouldn't have been there in the first place. But
Agreed.
the shootings as they unfolded, it appears justified in a self-defense type action. So
And I also agree too that you can be incorrect in the initial moral standing, but that doesn't take away, like, you can make a bad choice and put yourself in a bad position morally, but you still, that doesn't mean that every single situation that arises from that negates your ability to, like, defend yourself. Now, to be fair, I don't know in that initial shooting. This my problem with the initial shooting is I don't know if maybe he said something to provoke this guy, like saying like I'm gonna shoot you or something like that. We don't know why the guy lunged for the gun, and we
right,
may never know. But
it's hard just from seeing the videos of him prior to all of that.
mm,
So I can't judge this kid on his character at all. Obviously, he's got poor judgment, in my opinion, for even being there.
yeah,
uh, but just seeing the videos of him like throughout the day there before, it's hard to believe that he would be antagonistic. But it's not impossible. I don't think so. But again, I don't
I
know
mean,
if
he
we'll
could have been
ever know.
verbally provoked and then maybe said something stupid in response that was perceived as a threat too. I find
It
this
could
to
be.
be like more believable than maybe some of the other things that might be suggested. But the thing that I had a really big problem with is like when the second shot was fired, he was leaving. He was trying to leave the situation, and he was being chased um, by somebody who was aggressing on him, and that made it. That's kind of when I had this perspective given to me. That's sort of what turned me. At least, like I said, on that one, on the first one, I can't give a concrete answer because I don't
Sure.
know what provoked the grabbing of the gun. I know that it would certainly take a lot for me to go and reach for the barrel of somebody's gun. So somebody, obviously, one person in this situation was acting very, very, very stupid, if not both parties. But at the very
Yeah.
minimum, one person said or did something really stupid. If not both parties, maybe Kyle said something really really stupid that made this guy reach for the gun, which was maybe a little bit less stupid because if you think somebody's gonna kill you and you're unarmed and you're within reach of that gun, maybe that's the only option you have.
Yep. It's
Because
possible.
So that one I can't say, but on the second one, even if the first one was unjustified, I would have to say that the second one seemed pretty justified. And I see a lot of people making some like really weird claims, but I think that if I had a gun and somebody was chasing after me and trying to aggress me, like I would probably be inclined to use that gun if I was
Well, the
in that sort of
second and
situation.
third, because he shot
Oh
three
yeah,
people.
yeah, yeah, yeah. The other
Because the
two, he was being aggressed on both of those other times while
right, because
trying
he
to leave.
shot the initial alleged aggressor by the vehicle, which
Yep.
the situation's still pretty unclear. And then he's running away, and then somebody points him out like, "Hey, he just shot somebody,"
Yep.
and then he trips, and skateboard dude comes to try and whack him in the head, which is uh, deadly force because that could cause great bodily harm or death. Shoots him, and then the guy with the pistol comes up and he shoots him
Well,
because he's brandishing a firearm. And if you watch the video pretty closely on the third shot, and that's where, like, because initially it came out as, oh my god, active shooter Kenosha. Like,
sure.
oh crap. But then you watch that video, especially of the one where he after he shoots the guy with the skateboard, you
Yeah.
see he hesitates. And it's not like he hesitates until the last possible second. He was actually pretty well disciplined on the fucking trigger with that one. Uh, but again, the entire situation could have been avoided if he just fucking stayed in his own state and
Yeah.
didn't legally cross the state lines with a rifle. So
Yeah. And that rifle wasn't even registered to him, right?
I don't think it was, but I'm not certain on that.
Sure. Which too, I had mentioned to you before we talked about this. I'm not like super interested in the legal argument. That's for the courts to decide. I'm more interested in the moral argument.
Sure.
Um,
And I think as a slice of pie in each of those three, assuming that he was being aggressed on in the first one, and that's assuming a lot,
yeah,
I think each of those in their own little world are justified. And also in the totality of the circumstances, also justified. Um, because just because you are underage carrying a rifle, where many other people are carrying rifles as well,
hmm
you don't, it doesn't mean that you just like give up your right to life at that point. So,
I agree. I agree with that. Um, what was it? And two, I mean, I definitely know that somebody could make the argument that the skateboard isn't lethal force, but I would also say, in response to that, if somebody is aggressing on you while you're brandishing lethal force, you're displaying lethal force that's very clear. That's you putting somebody on notice. Hey, if you aggress me, I'm willing to use lethal force. And by them choosing to aggress you, they are consenting to the consequences of that.
yeah, I kind of approach the skateboard more from a police legal perspective,
Sure,
because deadly force is authorized when great death or great bodily harm could be caused to you or others,
sure.
and that would be death or great bodily harm. And
Yeah,
especially in an officer perspective, if somebody's coming at you with a skateboard and you choose not to act, now if they knock you out, they got your gun. So anything that
yeah.
would cause you to lose consciousness, it falls within like that great bodily harm stage.
Well,
So,
I would even argue too that if somebody like you don't have to submit your like bodily autonomy to somebody just be like you don't I don't think that your life has to be threatened in order to use lethal force either. Like if I think that like I don't have to just let you fuck me up.
right.
Like that's basically me forfeiting my autonomy to you. Like if you're not clearly showing that you're gonna kill me, like I don't know, I think I have the right to defend myself with lethal force against you fucking me up. Like I shouldn't have to get put into hospital. I shouldn't even have to break an arm. I should be able to defend myself. Interpreting like you just trying to like harm me like significantly. I mean, I don't think if somebody punches in the arm or something like that that you should be able to use lethal force. But if somebody's coming at you with a weapon, they're making a statement here. They're
Right.
especially if it really comes down to the fact that Kyle was displaying lethal force.
Right.
He's very clearly saying like, hey, I'm willing to use lethal force to defend myself. So you don't aggress that person unless you intend to use lethal force as well. That's in gun training if I'm not mistaken.
Well,
Is
I mean, and the same, uh, the same principle could be applied to police because, theoretically, we are displaying lethal force as a uniformed officer with a pistol.
I think everybody's on
Uh,
notice that a cop is capable of wielding lethal force. Oh wow.
sure. But you get and that's where, you kind of you see some of these videos of like people like holding a like a vape pen or some shit like a gun.
hmm
That officer has to make that fucking 0.5 second decision of is that a gun or is that not a gun. But now
hmm
what do you expect when you're turning around making a fast motion with a shiny object pointing it at you like it's a firearm? Well, that if your intent was to act like you had a gun, the officer's going to respond like you had a gun.
Sure.
Because I saw that video. There's one I believe it was out of California specifically, where that had happened. Where dude jumps out of a car like super quick, and then like turns around as if he was brandishing a firearm, but it turned out that he was just holding his vape pen. Like
I
a
mean,
big
even if
vape.
there's nothing in your hand, if you're feigning a firearm.
Right.
But then too, I just want to make sure that I'm not being too lenient here because I know too there's
Sure.
been cases where like there was a guy shot and I'm pretty sure it was in New York a long time ago. He was eating a pear and he got shot like several times to death. Obviously he died once. He got shot several times and he died. They claimed that they thought he was holding a hand grenade. He was eating a pear.
Well,
So
that seems kind of ridiculous.
yeah, I
So
would agree.
again, that's why it's so tough. And when it comes to like legal stuff and law interpretation, there's no like, I mean, there's obviously a standard to apply, but there's no blanket like right or wrong. Because you can't say, the big thing, the big hot button media shit is like unarmed man shot.
Sure.
Well, being unarmed doesn't necessarily inherently excuse you from being shot. As we had discussed before, you can put somebody's life in danger with not being armed. That happens. So
Yeah, that's true. I mean, if nothing else, you could be perceived as doing so.
yeah, but yeah,
So I guess it's not on my list, but it's something that I had just thought of, and I think it's a pretty important question to ask. What do you think that police could do better to improve confidence in them as a whole? What do you think should be done to inspire the kind of confidence that, like, I'm sure you would like to have had in the police?
probably more, and it probably more friendly interactions with. So I guess more community policing, I guess you could say. And I'm not necessarily talking about the cheesy like cop dancing videos and stuff like that.
Sure.
Although those can be fun and funny, but I saw something commented not too long ago about something like, man, cops really need to do a bunch of dancing videos to make all this right. As a joke, of course.
Sure, the meme.
Yes. So, but I honestly like community policing because unfortunately, we deal with citizens and people in times of usually like crisis, and like we deal with people like on their worst day of the month, of the year, and possibly of their life, and that's not to play any sort of victim here, but that's like day to day for us. So it's like your worst day is like our everyday in terms of what we have to deal with.
Sure.
So that that builds on stress, and officers need to have good mental health and outlets. But that's a whole different topic. But in terms of building confidence, I think like community policing and transparency would be two big factors. Because I try and go out of my way to go above and beyond just like simply responding to calls or dealing with like the bad shit. Just trying to help people out, and it's real. I guess it's easier task in a hospital setting than
Sure.
it is maybe in the community, but to show like we're here just to serve and to help the public and the people that we protect. So it's it's just, I guess, humanizing the people to show. Like, I know there's one guy, is it Mike the Cop on Facebook? He might be out of
He does the
Cleveland.
funny videos.
Yeah, like he's always like doing like videos with like the kids in the communities and stuff like that.
I'm pretty sure I know
maybe.
who you're talking about. Let me check real quick.
I don't know if it's Mike the Cop, but
It looks like it
there's-
is.
There's one, and I think he's out of Cleveland, and he wears like the funny hat that they wear there in Cleveland. I think it's Cleveland or Cincinnati, one of the two.
Oh no, this is actually a lot more. This is a lot more informative than I thought it was. Nope, this is not the guy that I was thinking of.
Maybe I know Mike the Cop is one, but there's other. No, that's not it. Oh no, is it?
Oh, he's not a cop anymore.
Oh, he's not.
Nope, his video 3 months ago is why I am no longer a cop, not clickbait. I guess
Oh.
he stopped being a cop just
Here it
recently.
is, the groove.
Some other cop commented and I said it was only a matter of time before you became a firefighter.
That's funny.
Okay, so based on the comments, it looks like it had something to do with hierarchy. Somebody said people don't quit jobs, they quit bosses. So without watching the whole video, I think that's my takeaway there.
More than likely.
So
But anyway,
no,
he was
lady, it's not Mike the cop, the one that I'm thinking of. He looks a little bit different. This
okay.
guy has
But I
some
think
hair.
Mike the cop was the one who did like a lot of community involvement stuff with like kids and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Uh, so I mean, just and not even like from a mean aspect, but like actually being involved and caring about like the community that you serve. Obviously, it's a lot easier for me since I'm so ingrained with the community that I serve, being a veteran and being, a user of the system. So, but that helps a lot to be able to relate. Um, and that's a harder question to answer, and probably, might be better answered by somebody who's actually like an actual community or municipal officer. But you know, I think the community policing and the transparency are two big important things when it comes to gaining trust uh, with your people.
Yeah, I would say that that's pretty fair. I think that community policing is a really humanizing thing too. Like so I mean I've had bad experiences with the police where I used to live.
Mhm.
Like I said, I was like illegally searched before a couple times actually. Nothing came of it. I didn't do anything wrong, but
Sure.
that rubbed me the wrong way. And just the way things work up there because it's a small area and they can get away with it. I didn't have the best perception of police overall, but like working where I work now, and I've actually had to call the cops on two separate occasions working at the computer store because of situations that had arisen with customers, and also like cops coming in to look at our cameras and things like that. I like my local cops. I had to call the cops one time because of out here too. That things didn't go the way that I'd hoped they would, but I didn't really hold the cops accountable for it, and it seemed like the cops were on my side. They just didn't have the jurisdiction to do what everybody, like myself and the cops, thought was the right thing to do in that situation.
Hmm.
Um, so I mean, I do really like the Garden City Police. They seem like they do their best. It seems like I haven't met a single shitty one out of all of it. Even my ex girlfriend, she got a ticket. She ran a red light. I think she was trying to bring me my crutches, and and I had to. No, she came up. She was bringing me my van or something like that. I remember I hopped out on crutches. He actually let her continue to the card shop to get me whatever I was, and it was my vehicle too, and to talk to me about it and all that. So like very, very, very lenient, very reasonable cops. He still had to give her a ticket. He's like she didn't even like try to stop for the red light. That was the first time I ever even heard that too. Like they tried to see if you tried to stop for the red light. So I definitely think that there's some shitty cops out there that aren't necessarily like evil. They're like not out shooting people or whatever, but they're just shitty in like in ways of like just trying to write tickets and whatnot. You know, like building that up for themselves. Just getting those citations because I know it looks good, whether they have a quota or not. Still looks good on you if you're making the city money. But I just
Yeah.
know that the ones around here, I have no reason to think that at all. My cousin got pulled over in my car for not having the headlights on. He thought they were automatic, and he almost hit the cop because of it because the lights weren't on. He didn't see them, and they didn't. And he didn't even have my insurance or anything with him, um, and that no ticket. I got pulled over for not having lights, no ticket. So like the cops in my area are really good. Um, oh, was Gila coming to pick you up from work when she got pulled over? And then she stopped at the card shop. Is that what it was? Oh, I guess she was going to pick my wife up from work.
Okay.
And she got pulled over near where I was at playing cards.
Yeah, and when it comes to a matter of getting a ticket or not, I know some officers go from the perspective of before their first interaction, they decide if they're going to cite or not.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes it just may not be your lucky day. I
Yes,
will
Gila
tell
was
you,
coming to pick me up. She
being
had
a
a
straight up
truck.
dick
She got
does
stopped.
not ever
Also,
help your
we had
chances
almost hit a cop.
of
We almost got rear-ended by
not
a
getting a
cop because we
ticket.
had a red light and Travis didn't have his lights on. They thought we were gonna run it.
So could you repeat that very last part? My wife came up and talked to me. I'm sorry, buddy.
No, that's fine. I'm saying
Oh,
being
they.
a dick during a
Yeah.
traffic stop is never going to help your chances of getting out of a ticket.
Yeah, I know.
So like, uh, you know, and it's all some cops are out to cite and cite and cite. I know from our perspective, there's no incentive to or to not write tickets because that money just disappears into the federal machine, and it's not like it. Oh, if we write more tickets, we'll get cooler shit. Like that's not how it works. Um, so there's no incentive to write or to not write. It
Mm.
usually comes down to is the traffic stop and being pulled over and the warning going to get through to you, or do you need a monetary fine to learn a lesson? Essentially,
Well, is that for everywhere? Because I know that I drove for Lyft a lot 2 years ago, and I had talked to an ex New York cop, New York City cop, and he was not only did he tell me about a whole bunch of like really really shitty shit he saw. Like this dude, we had like a 45-minute ride. He told me some crazy stuff. But he told me that he goes, they say we don't have quotas, but we absolutely do. You ain't out there writing tickets, you're losing your fucking job, man. That's like
uh,
verbatim.
it could be for different departments. I know
Mm-hmm.
in the world of the VA nationwide, there's no incentive to write tickets and there's no quota.
Sure.
Obviously, uh, you know, if you sit there and don't do a report in a month, it's like, dude, what the fuck are you even doing? Because there's shit
Sure.
that's happening. But it
Yeah.
doesn't mean that you can't pull somebody over, warn them, and then do a warning report to show the same productivity. Uh, and I know my department currently is very pro officer discretion
Mm-hmm.
because there's tickets that we write where people go and complain to the chief and say, I want this ticket revoked. And they're like, we'll see what the officer says.
Mm-hmm.
And then I know there's some instances where uh, the chief will say you should write a ticket, and the deputy chief will tell us, well, it's your discretion. So, it's kind of
And
it's really up to you.
I would
So,
definitely assume too that if there was any kind of quota thing, that would more be a just like the head of that area rather than like some actual mandate. It would
yeah,
just be
it's
somebody's boss pushing their ideology rather than anything else.
more than likely, I would say. But yeah, to say that there isn't any would be false because I'm sure there are, but in my personal experience, there has been none. So, really, the biggest factor really comes into um, what you like the interaction that I have with you.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you want to in my opinion, honesty in terms of like the traffic stop and stuff like that, if you own up to it and I don't need you to profusely apologize and like kiss my feet type bullshit, but
Sure.
if you're like, yep, you got me, I totally, spaced out, sorry about that. Like I'm way more inclined to give you a warning for being honest
Sure.
than like I don't know what you're talking about. Show me the video. Like, okay, bud. And I've had that too, where it's like, oh well, I stopped and I said, well, I'm writing you the ticket. Okay, well I'm going to court. I'm like, okay, cool. So I brought the video in. It's like, so you know, uh, it is what it is. So,
Yeah, I feel you on that.
but yeah, don't be a dick, and usually, can't say usually won't get a ticket, but your chances of not getting a ticket will probably increase if you're at least courteous and respectful, and you should be expecting the same. And that's how I always play it in any interaction. I've ticketed guys or arrested people, and they've been courteous to me, and I'm 100% courteous back. I'm even courteous to the people who call me a fucking pig and this and that, and you know, it is what it is. So
Sure. I mean, I read an article too that said that one of the best things you can do to not get a ticket is that when you initially see the cop, is that you wave to them.
Oh gosh, are we all just?
It's just like this friendly gesture that kind of like takes them outside of this framing of like that like that you don't like them and things like
That's
that.
what I was going
It's sort of just like I guess the idea here is that just like being friendly and that initial exchange goes a long
for.
way.
No,
It's like you said, it's usually like it's more of like how that officer's feeling at the time. Like they may decide right away that whether or not they're going to give you a ticket before they get out of the car.
yep.
So it seems
Uh,
like that like I think my takeaway from that was that like just being friendly rather than being respectful, like just taking it a step further, just being friendly, just treating them like like a neighborly person might, would probably go a long way.
I would agree with that. Yeah, being it's hard to give somebody who's really nice a ticket. So, there's always that aspect.
I feel like I've only gotten one ticket ever, and it was because when I got my plate, I didn't get the sticker for it, and I said to the Secretary of State lady, I was like, I don't need a ticket, or a sticker for it. She's like, no, that's like taken care of. So I just assumed it was on the plate, and it wasn't, and I had to go up there and get one. So I got like a $35 ticket. And that's like the only ticket I've ever gotten in my life for driving infraction.
I got one ticket when I was 16.
Speeding?
And nope, it was backing out of a one-way street.
Ooh.
Granted, I was being a fucking dick, and I just got my license, and my other buddy just got his license, and we were driving around like a bunch of dickheads. But we turned into a dead end, and I backed out. And the cop got me, and I think that's the only reason he gave me the ticket on that is because that's the only thing he could prove. So, but whatever. That's one ticket I got right when I got my license, and haven't gotten one since. So
I guess to end this, I just thought of this. I'll tell you a fun story about this time that I had to go to court. I think it was about fines or something like that. It was to like close the case. I had went to jail for a weekend for having an MIP when I was 18, which is a long story. Minor in possession.
Minor. Oh, okay.
Of alcohol. And so I couldn't pay the fines on that, so I went to jail for not paying the fines, and I did time, and then I had more fines from going to court for that, which I couldn't pay, because I live out in the middle of nowhere. I just couldn't find a fucking job. And so I ended up going to jail like a couple times for that, and then one of them was just to close the case, and I went in there and it was all good. And I left court, and I was driving back to my house on this dirt road, because that's all the fuck there is up there once you leave the city. And I looked down in my pocket. I had a fucking joint in my shirt pocket while I was at court.
She hates it. She's like, I literally will be sleeping and he just scares me.
That is awesome.
I looked down, I was like, what? I was like, no fucking way. And then I smoked the joint on the way home. I was like, oh, I gotta get rid of it. I'm not gonna throw it out my fucking window.
Victory joint.
Oh my gosh. I think I was, shit, I must have been like 19 or 20 years old.
That's funny, man.
Oh, actually, there was one of the coolest cops I ever ran into. I went into a ditch because I realized that I had a grinder in my pocket, which I didn't mean to. I wasn't like trying to smoke on the ride home or anything like that. And my wife had we went to a graduation party for somebody that was like, if she wasn't in my wife's class, she was close to it. My wife's 7 years younger than me. And she had like a sip of alcohol while she was there, and she was underage, which made me super nervous. And we passed by a cop, and so I just didn't want. I was so scared of getting pulled over that I was like, "Shit, there's that grinder in my pocket," and I'm like trying to stash it in my seat behind me, and I whipped onto the dirt road. So I ran over a sign and went into a ditch. While I'm trying to stash this grinder like behind the seat because I'm so fucking paranoid. I don't want to get in trouble for anything, because I've been in trouble for like nothing, as we just discussed. And so the truck's in the ditch, these people drive by, and I think it's the cops. So what I do is I get out of the ditch, and my wife and I just walk down this dirt road at like 1 o'clock in the morning, like we didn't just go into a ditch, because that's how cool you can play it for a cop, I guess. And they weren't. They were like, do you need a ride or something? I was like, yeah, please. So we got a ride a couple of miles over to my grandma's house. And I took my mom with me. I was like, hey, we're going to go pick up the truck. And when I got there, there was a cop sitting there already. And I was like, oh, shit. So he goes, why did you leave the scene? And I explained, like, I said, my phone was dying. My phone was dead. I didn't have any way to get anywhere. So I just went home, and I came back to the vehicle right away. And I told him these people picked us up. And then I said, it's just so you know. I walked towards my truck. I said, just so you know, because I assumed he'd want to search the vehicle. I was like, there is an ounce of marijuana in my vehicle. And he went, like, just the look on his face, super shocked. And I just put up my hand, like, hang on. And as I continued to walk towards the vehicle, I was like, I have a medical marijuana card. It's for my mother. She's my patient. I'm a caregiver. She's my patient. I mean, it was for me, but she was my patient, though. And I just continued to walk to the vehicle. And the cop was just standing there, like, flabbergasted. And I went down in the ditch and I pulled out my safe, and I was like, this is, and like I was like, we had, and I basically said I wasn't gonna take this with me, with the people. I wasn't gonna put like drugs in their vehicle, and I didn't want to explain it to them in case they wouldn't give me a ride. And I opened up. He looked. He's like, "Oh, okay." And then he's like, "I could give you a ticket for fleeing the scene." And I was just like, get so nervous, like, oh my god, like I can't afford a ticket at all. I don't want to go to jail for not paying a ticket. And then like he's like, just calm down, calm down. He gave me nothing. Called the tow truck. I got my truck towed out, and I got to drive my truck home. And I've never felt more invincible in my life. And then the the kicker to the whole story is before we left, we had mushrooms, and my wife was like, "Just put it in the safe." I was like, "No way, I'm putting it in the safe. What if I don't open the safe and show a cop that there's fucking pot in here? I'm allowed to have pot in a safe. I'm not allowed to have mushrooms." So I put it in the liner of the truck, which he never ended up searching my truck because I told him about the pot and showed it to him. So like it was all that good faith went so far to getting me out of trouble there.
The old switcheroo.
I
Here, I'll
was
show you the pot while I
distracted.
hide the mushrooms.
I didn't touch it. I didn't go to the back of my truck at all. Fuck that, I'm not drawing attention to the bed of the truck at all.
I was a little distracted by the fact that we got out of the truck and you're like, just walk down the road. I was like, wait, that sounds super suspicious and something that we shouldn't do. That's what got me the whole time. Like, I'm just like, why are we walking away?
I never felt more invincible in my life. I got to drive home with my fucking weed and my mushrooms in the
I
back
told
of the
you to
truck.
tell him
Then
we
those ended
spoke
up being
for a
super.
deer.
Those that mushrooms ended up being super bunk too. We did not have a good time that night.
That's unfortunate. With all that hard work, it would have paid off
Do you
a
hear
little
me?
bit better.
The stress probably counteracted it a bit too.
What are you doing? You driving a dryer?
Oh man, it was a different time for me, man. I don't do nothing anymore. I'm super boring. I just fucking vape and eat. I don't even smoke weed
Yeah.
anymore now that it's legal. My body decided it didn't want it anymore.
Well, that's unfortunate.
I don't drink. I just get fat and I vape and play video games.
I suppose we all have our vices, whether they're super fun and cool like weed, or less cool like vaping and eating.
Are you guys legal over there?
We are not.
Oh, that's weird. Do you have a lot of Is it medically legal?
No.
Oh wow.
So, but then also two aspect, the federal aspect.
Yeah.
So until it's federally legal, it's still illegal for us
Yeah, I know that.
on property. But I mean, you know, my 2 cents. The shit should be legal. I think it's
Sure.
way less dangerous than alcohol overall.
It's demonstrably less harmful.
Yeah, the fact that it's a Schedule 1 drug federally is insane.
Yeah.
Like cocaine, Schedule 2, but that pot, fucking crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Well, shit. Maybe next time we talk, I'll bring up the war on drugs too. That could be a fun one.
Ooh. The failed war on drugs, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, I without getting too far into it, I don't think that it was a war intended to win.
No,
That's how you
just
get funding.
Yeah, exactly. It was a war for money, and they
Yeah.
won that. So.
Well, hey, buddy, I kept you for 2.5 hours. I hope it wasn't longer than you thought it was going to be.
No, you know, I expected a couple hours, maybe a little longer, but I don't think. Hope I wasn't boring for anybody.
No, I think it was good. We had some people even chatting and stuff. That's pretty good, and hopefully it does good on YouTube. Coming off my last ones, my last two YouTube videos combined now have almost 400 views. No, almost 500 views now. That was the Darth
Well-
Dawkins ones. So hopefully coming off of that, we'll get some hits on this. And
Probably considerably less followed than that guy. So, but yeah, this was fun, and you know, anytime you wanna chat shit about cop stuff, army stuff, or otherwise, I'd be down.
Yeah, and I'm glad. I mean, taking from your action, it was how you wanted it to go to.
Yeah, I think you know, we shared some opinions of what we had. You know, I gave a little insight from what I had, through my experience and training, and maybe enlighten you at least on a thing or two.
Yeah, definitely the tear
And-
gas thing.
Yeah, good little nugget of knowledge, and just in general, I'm glad you're seeking out different perspectives from people who are actually in it. And for me, a takeaway with the ACAB and the defund police. I mean, it's hard to try and justify any of that when the names are what they are and they're
Sure.
branded how they are. So, I mean, I get the ideas behind them. I agree with some of it, more so in the defund police in terms of like adjusting funding for police or restructured police. But the more they market it and go hardline with like the whole anarchy defund police bullshit, the less I'll tend to listen to any of that noise. So
Sure. The loudest voices aren't necessarily the most informed.
yeah, it's so true on every front.
Yeah, yeah.
So
All right. By the way, I fully invite you to add me on Blizzard. We can fucking play some Call of Duty sometime.
oh yeah, DM me your Blizzard account.
I sure will, buddy.
Yeah. And we'll play sometime.
Hell yeah, my dude. All right, I'm gonna let you go. I'm still trapped in this poker game, but I'm gonna try to do some other stuff while I'm playing poker.
Sounds
So-
good.
All right, have a good night, my dude.
Yeah, take it easy.
Thanks, you too. Bye.
All right, bye.
Yeah, that went pretty well. From what I understand, I'm supposed to have a detective coming on too soon, and having a similar kind of conversation. But he's a bit more local, so can get it a little bit more in depth with some of the things that are more relevant to me. And I assume that, like, since he's from here, well, at least in this general local area, that we can get some more. We're probably consuming a lot of the same media and things like that, so it should be, a little bit different than what we had tonight. So if you stayed with me, I really appreciate it. I see somebody else just popped in. Sorry you came in right at the tail end. But remember, you can rewatch this on Twitch, and it'll be coming up on YouTube. And if you do watch it on YouTube, I really hope that you like the video and that you subscribe to me. I have very few subscribers, and I'm working on that, trying to get some more interesting things going on here. So like I said, if you did enjoy it, do those things, and it's 100% free to follow me on Twitch. It's 100% free to like and subscribe to me on YouTube. So I hope that you do that. It's all under the same name. All right, thanks a bunch for hanging out, guys. I appreciate you. Have a good night.